Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. And today, very special show here, Sam. We need to review a couple Christmas Day games and then preview the rest of Week 17 in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Or we could preview them and be really accurate.
We could preview the Christmas Day games, make some predictions on the Chiefs and Ravens beatdowns. That's what I feel. That's what I feel is going to happen in Week 17. I'm coming to you live from the in-laws' house over here, and I'll say this: they did Christmas right over here. They were getting some Check the Mic Steve mugs. You know, the family came through with some mug purchases.
How does one find a Steve mug from Check the Mic merchandise?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, Sam. The link in the description, athletelogos.com/collection/check the mic. It's in the YouTube description. You too can have a Steve face mug, or if you prefer Sam's, you can, buy that one as well. Or hoodies, shirts, all sorts of fun stuff in there.
I have my delivery is showing up today, apparently. I'm informed.
Oh, nice.
The informed delivery thing.
I like it. I need all my stuff sent. Did you pay for it? I mean, they're just sending us stuff, right?
I think, yeah. I bought a selection of stuff. Like I wanted to check out the Shouty Show stuff.
Oh, good. So I'm getting commission off your purchase. That's great. I'm happy for that. Anyway, we're going to talk Christmas games. We're going to predict all of Week 17, the rest of what's remaining. And do you have an update on the picks in the Discord?
Yeah, the two sleeper leagues we have running, a Survivor League and a Pick'em League. The Survivor League it's the same story every week. It's as you were. No change. Two people still alive that have been ever present. Two more people, I think, that have joined after. Everyone got through last week, so all good. The Pick'em League is a lot more interesting, though. Somebody called El Chobo is top with 139 wins. He's now one clear of the chasing pack. I thought I had a bad week, but apparently did not lose as much ground as I thought I did. I have 137, so I'm 2 wins back, tied for fourth. I'm going to start flipping the order now. Harry, your son, the 9-year-old, is at 123 wins. So he's, 14 back from me. And then Steve Palazzolo, NFL expert, is at 112 wins, some 11 wins behind the 9-year-old.
Yeah, I forgot to get my first Christmas Day pick in yesterday. That week that I forgot a few picks is adding up. Plus, actual bad picks.
Yeah, it's definitely contributing to it. It doesn't, however, bridge the gap between you and the child.
Not great. And last week's strategy of going the opposite of him, I don't think worked.
No, that's the problem with that, right? You lose ground, and then you got to go contrarian, and contrarian just digs you a deeper hole.
Yeah, well, that's where we are. It's like, fourth down aggressiveness. Sometimes it goes the other way. So anyway, it's all in the Sleeper app, all a part of the Discord for Check the Mic. Appreciate everybody that's new subscribers. We'll talk about more. Appreciate everybody. How was your Christmas? Just to get that out of the way as well, Sam. You were sending me all sorts of fun food pictures. You were getting after it in the kitchen.
Yeah, it was good. And the food was good as well, though I think every constituent part of the Christmas meal is perfectly achievable and easy. It's when you have to get them all together at the same time using one oven that I ran out of shelf space, essentially. And what I didn't discover until yesterday is it turns out the bottom of the oven, like the actual, the floor of it, gets really hot, right? Like disproportionately so from a rack in the middle of the oven. So the stuff that I had placed on the very bottom, just because I ran out of shelf space, got a little bit burned in the bottom. But the beef was amazing. The potatoes were awesome. And everything above the very, very bottom burnt layer of those things was very good. So, yeah, it was a good meal.
I didn't know you were using the actual bottom of the oven. Okay.
I mean, I simply ran out of shelf, rack space. I
got to do what you
I didn't have an option.
Anyway, glad that was good. Hope everybody had a great Christmas.
We got it on the screen right now.
Pictures of the meat. This is not. Did you get good feedback on this? This wasn't like the time you were. I didn't ribs or Lincoln Riley reactions, right?
Yeah, I didn't get negative feedback. I wouldn't say I got universally positive feedback, but I certainly didn't get Lincoln Riley'd off of the internet with it.
Posting food on Twitter. That's probably one of the dumbest things you can do. There's always some expert out there going to tell you how bad your food was.
Yeah,
you be a gourmet chef and they'll be trashing it. So
well, this was good.
All right.
I enjoyed it.
All right, man. We got a lot to get to. It's all brought to you by PrizePicks. We'll be talking about our PrizePicks lineups a little bit later today. You and I both unveiling, since we didn't have a Wednesday show. We'll have our PrizePicks lineups later. You guys also can download the PrizePicks app today. Use code CheckTheMic to get $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, the Christmas games started yesterday. Kansas City Chiefs 29-10 over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I said, we will review these couple games and then get into the rest of the slate. First time we've ever really had to do this. Game got close at one point. Steelers got within 6, but never really felt all that close. The Chiefs in control, and maybe the best their offense has looked. I know a couple times this year we've said, hey, Chiefs offense finding their groove. But in particular, these last couple weeks, Marquise Brown is back, opening things up for guys like Justin Watson to get 2 catches for 60 yards, including a 49-yarder and a 21-yard touchdown. Patrick Mahomes finishing with 3 touchdowns, 320 yards in this one.
Yeah, there was definitely opportunities in the game, I think, for Pittsburgh to have made it a closer game. But the breaks kept going Kansas City's way, and eventually the Chiefs were able to ease away and make it a fairly comfortable game overall. I think the big picture takeaway, I mean, this entire day, right, the 2 games, it felt like kind of an exercise in contender versus pretender almost. Like this is the standard versus where you need to get to if you want to be the standard. And both Pittsburgh and Houston, I think, came up significantly short of what the standard is going to be. Now, the Steelers, I think, have demonstrated that they're at least capable of hitting that standard sometimes. They just didn't yesterday. And for the rest of the league, the rest of the AFC in particular, like you watch the Chiefs coming out of that game and you're like, oh man, they are potentially, we're December the 25th, December the 26th now. That looks like they're flipping the switch, right? We're heading into, and now they've got themselves the number 1 seed. They've got themselves the rest week. They've got themselves the opportunity to put their feet up a bit and ease into the postseason. They got the extra week of rest, the extra week of not risking anything. But when other teams are playing a game, I mean, the Chiefs look formidable right now.
Yeah, they really do. And I said earlier, the offense is hitting their groove. The defense now, number 1 in the NFL in points per game allowed at 18. So they've just overtaken the Los Angeles Chargers by only giving up the 10 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their defense has done a really nice job this year, I think, cracking down, even if they've let teams into the red zone, cracking down, making life difficult. I think there's an offensive element to this, the slow ball control style that Kansas City's playing. They're playing complementary football at a high level, and I saw the stats going around about Patrick Mahomes getting rid of the ball quickly and everything. A huge factor that is, I think the Marquise Brown factor, right? You just have one extra guy to get open quickly. We see Travis Kelce with 8 catches for 84 yards. So you're right. This does feel like January Chiefs right now. I'll let you comment on that. And then I think we have to touch on the dynamic that the Chiefs are facing right now, where they've clinched the number 1 seed, and they might not play another game until I think the weekend of January 19th or 20th, another significant game. So they tend to rest their starters, and it's like 3.5 weeks off if they really choose to sit Mahomes and some of those other starters.
2.33 seconds average time to throw for Mahomes in this game, which is like 0.2 faster than the week before, where we were complimenting them for changing their game and getting the ball out quickly. I mean, that is how you take away the impact of a guy like TJ Watt and limit the Steelers' offense and not have, or defense rather, and not have them be massive factors in the game with what is arguably the best pass rush in the NFL. The best pass rush in the NFL didn't, create sacks, didn't create hits, didn't get many hurries. They weren't a huge factor because the ball was coming out so quickly. Huge part of that Chiefs game. And, I still think that offensive line is a potential problem, but they've shown the last 2 weeks that they are really good at being able to mitigate that with the game plan.
And they did all this yesterday without Chris Jones. So as I mentioned, defense number 1 in points per game allowed. Still played extremely well. Russell Wilson, red zone interception. Like you said, a couple times, if the Steelers were going to make a comeback, a couple big plays in there. But Russ throws a bad interception as they get into the red zone. Pat Freiermuth fumbles. Trent McDuffie with a nice job on a forced fumble. The offense for the Chiefs also had 2 short fields, one off a punt return, one off that fumble. So you're talking full complementary football, offense, defense, and special teams for the Chiefs dominating this one. As you said, looks like playoff Chiefs.
What did you make of the broadcast decision to effectively have a presence in the booth whose sole purpose seemed to be to point out individual TJ Watt wins?
Because we were doing Christmas stuff with the family, and my wife kept staring at me like, "Hey, it's Christmas Day," as I'm sitting on the couch watching. Didn't really have audio going, but I was in my head predicting JJ, ignoring anything bad that TJ did. I'm sure it was completely unbiased, though, JJ's analysis of TJ Watt Steelers.
It was more like, there's a play going on, and which Eagle was this one? The play-by-play guy, Noah or Ian?
Noah.
Anyway, the play happens, the play-by-play guy's finished, and then immediately J.J. Watt's going, "It's coming back, holding on 74." It's like, because he's just, all he's looking at is T.J. Watt going up against Juwan Taylor every single snap, right? So that was J.J. Watt's primary contribution to the broadcast, was simply like almost a one-man play-by-play, Ian Eagle's taking the actual game, what's happening, and then J.J.'s just lasered in on Juwan Taylor versus TJ Watt and telling you all the hidden stuff that you're not paying attention to.
Spotlight cam on TJ. All right, so let's just touch on this quickly. Chiefs lock up the number 1 seed. Historically, they do tend to rest starters. They did that last year. I think it was Blaine Gabbert got the Week 18 start last year. So they have Week 18, and then the wild card round. Plus, they played this game on Christmas, right, on a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So you got this half. So you've got this extra rest going into Week 18. They have a history of sitting starters in Week 18. They'll have the wild card round off, and then the divisional round is not till January 19th is the Sunday. So it's like the 18th or the 19th. Unprecedented potential amount of time off for the Chiefs starters. Is that going to be, what we're looking at here? And or are they actually going to try to, give them some reps maybe next week?
I would imagine them sitting them. Like, I don't think it's a massive deal. Like, for a team that we're talking about that does seem to have the ability to flip a switch when it matters, like, do we genuinely think that an extra week is going to cause them suddenly to be bumbling, rust-filled messes? No. So sit them.
College teams do this all the time. This is like bowl season, right? You play your last game at Thanksgiving, and then you show up on New Year's Day and play. It's like bowl season. Just a fascinating turn of events. And it also appears, once again, Chiefs are 1 game away from the AFC Championship every year since 2018. They've been there. Everyone except one has been in Kansas City. That's where it would be again. And now we're looking at the AFC, which does look top-heavy. Let's talk about the Ravens in 2 seconds here. Ravens back in control of the AFC North. The Bills looking really good. They appear to be on a collision course for a 2 versus 3 battle. The winner going probably to Kansas City. And I think a couple of weeks ago, a Chiefs first-round matchup against the Chargers, the Broncos, the Texans, the Steelers. It looked like, hey, maybe somebody can compete. But as you said, contenders versus pretenders over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if anybody's stopping the Chiefs from getting to the AFC Championship against either Baltimore or Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a couple of those AFC teams are looking a lot more damaged than they were a few weeks ago. I still think there are teams that can scare them, but yeah, if the Texans, will get to them now, but they didn't look like they could bring it up to the Chiefs.
All right, well, let's do it. Baltimore 31, Houston Texans 2. 31-2. It was an impressive safety from the Texans. Kamari Lassiter, really nice play, diving into the end zone to tackle Derrick Henry. Very impressive. Other than that, though, Ravens absolutely dominated. Lamar Jackson goes 10 of 15 for 168, 2 touchdowns, has another 87 on the ground, including a 48-yard touchdown. And Derrick Henry, man, it felt like every single time he carried, except for the one that ended in a safety, he had a 5-yard head of steam to the second level. He finishes with a $147 on 27 carries, 251 total rushing yards for the Ravens. And the Texans, just a rough performance offensively.
Yeah, I mean, the Texans, it's just not functioning right now. That offensive line is a mess. Their receiving core is just Nico Collins at this point. Nico Collins, like, their teams are able to attack one guy, right? So all of a sudden, like, John Mechie needs to be a big part of the offense. Xavier Hutchinson, they just don't have the players that they're able to make this function with. And the Ravens defense, people have been talking about this for a while, but that pivot that they made midway through the season to sort of shore up the deep secondary by putting Kyle Hamilton back there, move him from that sort of slot strong safety role, put him back as a free safety, has made a huge difference. I mean, he massively improves the back end, and that lets them shore up the entire secondary. That's made a big difference to their overall defense. they were suffocating the Houston offense, which itself has been, stumbling over the last few weeks. I mean, this just looked like one team that's kind of hit its groove and another team that's completely fallen out and almost fallen apart at this point. I mean, the Texans are one of those teams that looks like they are limping their way into the postseason.
Yeah, and another one of those games where you're watching and you're saying, okay, what would Houston need to do to get back into this? It's 10-0. It wasn't completely dominant from the Ravens early on. The Texans get the safety. Maybe that's going to help from a momentum perspective. Then they get into the red zone, swing pass to Joe Mixon on 4th down, gets stopped right at the goal line. So Baltimore keeps them out of the end zone. They go up 17-2 with another classic Lamar Jackson scramble drill touchdown. Unbelievable play to Isaiah Likely on a 99-yard drive. So how about that, momentum swing, Sam? It's not a momentum swing. It's just a football swing, right? You made a good play, you stopped it, and you made a bunch of other good plays offensively. So they stop Mixon at the goal line, then go 99 yards on 6 plays, capped by Lamar Jackson doing his Lamar Jackson stuff for a 9-yard touchdown. So it's 17-2 at the half. Stroud comes out second half, throws a pick to Kyle Hamilton. It's pretty much all she wrote. Lamar with the 48-yard touchdown, as I mentioned, and just an absolute beatdown by the Ravens. And I think your point earlier was a fair one. It does feel like the Ravens, Bills, and Chiefs all, I don't want to say peaking, but they all look like the best, right? The Bills haven't played their best football the last couple of weeks, but the Ravens are, and the Chiefs are, and we're trending toward these top 3 teams in the AFC absolutely separating themselves.
That touchdown that Lamar Jackson, the one to Isaiah Likely, was that's like a college play, right? Where the guy just wins by being an athlete for 10 seconds. Like he's out in the sort of open field and Donnell Hunter, who's like a top tier pass rusher, Donnell Hunter and an athlete, like Donnell Hunter, the poster boy for like, hey, you might not need to be a productive college player. If you're a freaky athlete, you can become an amazing NFL player. Donnell Hunter, freaky athlete pass rusher, has Lamar Jackson one-on-one in the open field, and Jackson just like extends the play for 5-7 seconds until Likely eventually, ad-libs his way into open space and throws the ball right over the top for a touchdown. Hunter never gets particularly close to making that play. You can't do that in the NFL. Like, the athletes are too good, and Lamar Jackson can. Like, he's one of the few, if not only, players that is capable of doing that. It was like a college or high school level play that Lamar Jackson was able to execute in the red zone against an NFL defense.
Forget who had the hilarious tweet. I think earlier this year, Lamar, so I can't give proper credit, but Lamar looks like the uncle playing football with his nephews at like Thanksgiving, just running around, fooling around. Oh, you can't catch me. It's like me playing with my 4 sons. Yeah, try to catch me, kids. I'm faster than you. I'm bigger and stronger than you. Lamar just playing around. I don't mean to bring it up as far as the playoff aspect of it, but I am always fascinated by that. Lamar could get his 3rd MVP here, and deservedly so. We don't have to break down the whole MVP conversation that people have just lost their minds about. But can he do it in the playoffs? Can he do it against the Chiefs? Can he do it in the AFC Championship? Until he does, I saw people comparing him to Peyton Manning recently. If people can remember 20 years ago, that was the Peyton Manning narrative. And even when Peyton didn't have he was a great regular season quarterback. And even when he didn't have a good playoff run as a player, they still won the Super Bowl. He had 3 touchdowns and 7 picks on his Super Bowl run. But it was like, all right, he got a Super Bowl. He's fine now. He's okay. I mean, Lamar's still going to be fighting back against that. So I hate to diminish anything he's doing. I'm just fascinated to see these matchups with the Bills, potentially with the Chiefs in the playoffs again. And if you get, like, I think it's fair to put Mahomes on the same level as Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen in the regular season. They've outplayed him in the regular season, but now can they put it all together in the playoffs the way the Chiefs always seem to be able to do it? We're going to find out within a month here.
That's why, like, I think the Super Bowl thing is always sort of validation in a way that's always kind of silly. Like Dan Marino, right? Excuse me. Dan Marino, the greatest quarterback to never win a Super Bowl. And it's the sort of thing that hangs over his head. Peyton Manning got a Super Bowl quite early, but then only had one for a guy that is arguably, for his career was arguably the greatest quarterback to ever play. I think for him, the second quarterback the second Super Bowl was an unusual validation because it did hang over him for a lot of his career that he didn't quite play as well in the postseason. And a lot of that was because he went up against Belichick and Brady, and those guys were able to bring that defense to really shut him down. But I think the same thing is true for Lamar now. Like, he has demonstrably been worse in the postseason than he has been in the regular season, where he may be a three-time MVP. At some point, he does need to buck that trend, even if it is just variance, even if it is just luck. He needs to show up in the postseason and have a run of MVP-like play and maybe get that Super Bowl win. Otherwise, this ends up kind of casting a shadow over his career. I've been paying attention to the Twitter accounts of Dan Orlovsky in particular, because obviously Dano declared the MVP race over a couple of weeks ago when Josh Allen had a really good performance. Coming out of this game, he's wavering. He's like, MVP was over, but then Lamar Jackson had a really good scramble run, so suddenly my vote is up for grabs again. But I think my favorite one of this genre is RG3. RG3, who tweeted after that game, where is it now? RG3 tweeted, quote, "Who said Lamar Jackson wasn't the MVP?" And then he's kind of given the look over his glasses, as in, who was foolish enough to do that?
Could it be me? Says
right.
RG3.
And it turns out that the person foolish enough to have done that 6 days before that tweet was, in fact, RG3, who tweeted 6 days before that, NFL MVP front runners, number 1, Josh Allen. Number 2, Lamar Jackson. So it turns out that the person foolish enough to suggest that Lamar Jackson wasn't MVP 6 days before that was, in fact, RG3.
Yeah, that's just peak MVP discourse, man. And we start this nonsense back in like October. Like, oh, MVP. Look at this. Sunday Night Football, MVP performance. Ugh, sick of it. But either one, honestly, I think Lamar's probably more deserving than Josh Allen. Sorry, Bills fans. But
it's getting
I'm fine either way. Fine either way. I just saw the odds too. Like, Josh Allen's still very much the favorite. And Allen is at a point where if they win against the Jets this weekend, they lock up the 2 seed. They're pretty much locked up as the 2 seed. So it's not, he might have to sit out. And it's one of those, like, Hayes in the barn, like he might just sit out week 18 and be locked in, even if Lamar goes off the next. And then I think they would be locked into the 3 seed anyway, so they could be rested. So it'll probably be wrapped up by this weekend. So Josh Allen has to have a big performance at 1 o'clock against the Jets to offset what Lamar did, I guess.
The odds moved significantly, though, in that game, which is kind of funny. Yeah. The other what was I going to say? The other thing is they showed the kind of stats at the end of that game, and like Lamar's statistics are starting to get fairly difficult to argue against. Like Josh Allen had all the MVP narrative hype.
That's what I told you last week. The longer we go,
I know. Yeah. The longer we go, the more unimpeachable Lamar's stats are going to end up being towards the end of the season. One last thing I wanted to, because this is a hobby horse of yours, you hate streaming service games because you can't flip channels, right? You can't just easily go to something else. How much, I saw somebody tweet this out, again, I can't remember who, so unfortunately can't credit, but they were like, this is the greatest middle finger that Roger Goodell has ever thrown up to the NBA, right? Not only are we going to drop 2 NFL games on the traditional Christmas Day NBA landscape, but we're going to put them on Netflix so that you can't even flick away to the NBA game. You are watching the NFL for 6 hours today when you would ordinarily be watching the NBA, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't affect me because I'm not flipping to the NBA. So, but I can imagine, that is, man, next year, quadruple header. It's on a Thursday. Wait till next year. 1, 4, 7:30, and 10. Christmas Day next year. You just wait. Because LeBron's NBA. Upset. It's our day. Christmas Day. Yeah, you wait.
Carmelo.
So Christmas is on a Thursday.
As well.
Who was?
Carmelo Anthony. She's like, come on, guys. This is our day. Get out. Leave it.
Yeah. I mean, they just went head-to-head with the college football playoff last week.
With the
same good teams. Yeah. They don't care.
All the traditional, these are the days the NFL doesn't doesn't intrude over, the NFL's just saying, to hell with that now. We're taking it all over.
They're one step away from dropping Chiefs-Ravens head-to-head with Army-Navy in a couple of years.
Yeah.
You watch. Who cares? Sorry, Army-Navy. Nice tradition and all. It's NFL's day. Anyway, good for the NFL. They help pay the bills too, right? People like the NFL. It's what we cover. So, but yeah, I mean, the streaming services hurt your ability to do anything. What are you going to do? Anything else on this one? It's we didn't talk much about the Texans, but they were sad. Unblocked. I mean, a sack on an unblocked stunt felt like it summed up the season for the Texans, but everything just off on that offense right now.
Yeah, it's pretty rough looking at the moment.
All right, well, we're thrilled to be sponsored by our friends over at Circa Resort and Casino, one of the premier destinations for sports fans in Las Vegas. So next week, we're going to be going out there for the season finale, Week 18. We're going out broadcasting from Circa, checking out Stadium Swim, which is the very best place to watch games, and the Legacy Club, which includes some of the best views of the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. So the January 3rd, that's the Friday, we're going to be flying out there. We're going to have a little meet and greet that Friday night, January 3rd. So check the mic meet and greet that night. Saturday, we'll be watching, I believe it's 2 NFL games that day, and then the full slate of the other 14 that Sunday from Stadium Swim or from the sports book there. Great places to watch games. So we're going to be down there next week, and we want you guys to come join us. The link is in the description, circalasvegas.com/huddle up at Overhang. Choose the Los Angeles weekend because the Chargers are in town. So it's Chargers Raiders that weekend. So choose Los Angeles weekend in the drop-down box and come join us over at Circa Week 18.
Yeah, super excited by that. Amazing place. I'm absolutely pumped to be catching an NFL weekend slate of games there. I think that'll be an awesome experience. And yeah, if you can get out to Vegas for that final weekend of the season, come hang out with us.
All right, man, we got to get through the rest of our games here. So we're going to start. We're going to go a little different order here. We're going to do our Thursday night football preview, and then we'll go by the conferences because we're going to focus on some playoff matchups. Thursday night football. We have more games here this weekend, Sam. Seahawks at the Bears, the 8-7 Seattle Seahawks taking on the 4-11 Chicago Bears. Seahawks favored by 4.5 here. By the way, we mentioned the other day, just about a third of our YouTube viewers here are subscribers. We put a little subscribe button up there for you guys to help out. And a lot of people joined the fun here at Check the Mic. So we appreciate anybody. Hit the subscribe button. It's right there on the channel. And join us here at Check the Mic going forward. Appreciate everybody that's helped us grow over these last couple of years. So Seahawks and the Bears tonight. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Seahawks they look pretty good against the Minnesota Vikings team. I think the Vikings were able to eventually overcome that Seahawks team, and particularly late in the game, we saw magic with Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson. But for them to be able to go toe-to-toe with a team like the Vikings, who are still chasing that 1 seed, I think was impressive. With the Seahawks, it's kind of the same story all the way through the season, or at least at the start of the season. It's a really good team, top to bottom, with the only potential weakness being the interior of that offensive line. If Chicago is able to expose that or attack that, maybe it's a game. Outside of that, it feels like the Seahawks are better kind of across the board.
Yeah, the weaknesses of Seattle's offensive line have been exploited a ton, and Chicago hasn't done a good job exploiting anybody defensively in recent weeks. Some of their injuries maybe have caught up as well, but their defense was very promising early in the year. We've also mentioned, hey, is that coinciding with Matt Eberflus, defensive-minded head coach, being fired? There's elements to that as well, but struggling defense against an offense that every week I highlight has the firepower with DK Metcalf, with the way Jackson Smith and Jigba has really become one of the most dependable receivers in the league this year. It's been fun to watch him develop here. So I like Seattle a lot in this game, even in Chicago. And, I sent you the snippet of Caleb Williams and his weekly grades this year.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, as analysts, it's interesting to create narratives off of the flow of the season. And other times as an analyst, it's like it doesn't really mean anything, right? So I don't know what to make of Caleb Williams. If you look at PFF grades, if you look at EPA, if you look at any production metric, it is blocks of 3 bad, 3 good, 2 good, 2 bad, 2 good. And it's always bad, good, bad, good. And he had a very good game, playing from behind the other day against Detroit, but still had to make these big time throws against a Detroit defense that wasn't just sitting back and letting him do it. And he performed well. Are we going to finish strong here in Caleb Williams' season? And you go into the offseason saying, hey, he finished strong as a rookie. Let's build on that in year 2. Just to remind people, Sam Darnold did that as a rookie, right? And we created a whole narrative off that. Well, his last 4 games, he was outstanding, and it didn't matter going into his sophomore year. So I don't know what to make of Caleb Williams' complete roller coaster season that seems to come in 2 and 3 game chunks.
Yeah, it does feel entirely random. You're kind of it's frustrating because I mean, human beings generally and football analysts, we're always looking for a pattern, right? Something predictable, something you can use to project forward. And sometimes these things are just random. Like there's no rhyme or reason to when a guy's going to play well or play badly. You sent me that kind of grade by grade chart. I was like, that looks like just a worse version of Kyler Murray, where there's no particular logic as to when you're going to get unstoppable Kyler and when you're going to get a not particularly good Kyler performance. And actually, like we made that comp at some point during the season, Caleb Williams plays kind of like Kyler Murray, right? And that's what it is right now. Like he's capable of spectacular performances. He's capable of spectacular plays, but there's no consistency to it. There's no consistency generally to the offense. The offensive line is a bit banged up. I'm sure that's a contributing factor. Obviously, there's been a ton of change throughout the season. That's probably a factor as well. But the offense, I think, is too inconsistent to, go up against really good teams. And then the defense is banged up. I mean, they've lost personnel throughout the season. It's not quite the group that it was earlier in the year. And they've fired coaches that are presumably have an impact on that defense. So I think generally, the Bears are kind of looking to get out of this season at this point, it just without damage. Like it's done. Yeah. Let's move on to next year. Let's build. But this was a mess.
Yeah, kind of was. But I'm always interested in watching Caleb Williams play. When he's played well, it's, you've said, hey, this is why he's number 1 overall. When he's played poorly, it feels like everything is bad. The offense, the system, his accuracy, being all over the place. So coming off a good game, we'll see if he can stack these last couple heading into the offseason here. Anything else as far as this game goes? Where's Seattle as far as the play? So Seattle's in the wild card race, technically still in the NFC West race. Where are they as far as I lost my Seattle playoff scenarios here, Sam?
Oh, yeah?
Where are we?
It's a real blow.
Good job. Good job by me.
According to NFL,
19% chance to make the playoffs for the Seahawks. So they need some help. Obviously, game behind the Rams, not having the tiebreaker, and trying to sneak in as a wild card potentially here.
Yeah, they don't. They're one of those teams that doesn't have a huge hope, but is still technically fighting.
And by the way, just to put a bow in the Caleb Williams discussion, I also don't know what to make of him stylistically. The whole interception streak, but high sack rate, and then you have some great plays outside of structure, but it doesn't feel like I thought it would. And then inside of structure, his accuracy, like when he's been off, like he's just missed throws by a mile. Like a lot of what's happened isn't exactly maybe what I expected with Caleb Williams coming into the NFL.
He's like legitimately within sight of the all-time record for the interceptionless streak, right? Like not this game, but I think he could do it this season, theoretically. Like he hasn't thrown an interception since week 6, and he's only thrown 1 since week 3. I mean, this is absurd. He hasn't been playing like lights out in that over that period. Like there have been some bad passes in there. It's just that's a bizarre like the other Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, I forget which one is at the top of that all-time streak, and then the other one is second, and then it's Caleb Williams.
Makes perfect sense. Anyway, Seattle by 4.5 tonight in Chicago. Where are you going with this one?
Where am I going with this one? I haven't thrown on my info in the document. I think it's all in the sleep wrap. I think.
Who'd you pick for Christmas, by the way? I had the Chiefs and Ravens covering. How about you?
I went 500 in the Christmas games. I went with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. So only got one.
Oh, look at you being honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the app, so it's there. It's public information. It's not like I could hide it. I believe for this game, I have gone with the Seahawks to cover.
All right, I'll take Chicago. And Harry, who I'm chasing by like 10 here, he's going to take
Yeah.
Seattle to cover the 4.5. All right, so now we're going to go through. Let's go through the AFC and all the teams that are battling for playoff positioning, the final slots. And so we'll start on Saturday. There's a triple header Saturday for those who have not kept up here. The first game is the Chargers at the New England Patriots Saturday at 1 o'clock. Chargers win and they're in as far as the playoffs go in the wild card. They're favored by 4.5. Chargers are 9-6, taking on the 3-12 Patriots. Over under is 43.5 from our friends over at FanDuel.
Justin Herbert against his best stylistic comp. Is that Drake May? Drake May versus Herbert? Like Drake May is Justin Herbert with some added boneheaded plays in there.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, forget this year, but like coming out, from the draft, there was a lot of May and Herbert type of comps. You get the long, lanky body with some athleticism and everything. So I could see that. I think where it's different though, I mean, Herbert has, I don't think Drake May has a great arm. I think he's got a good arm. He's fine. Herbert has a great high RPM velocity arm, but I get some of the comps here. And plus you get a million comps when guys are coming out anyway. May's been compared to Josh Allen, compared to Herbert. So back-to-back weeks or 3 weeks in a row, he gets to maybe go up against some of his recent comps in the AFC.
It's just Drake May versus all of his stylistic comps late in the year.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, Chargers defense is interesting in this one, Sam. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, the Chiefs now have the lowest points per game allowed at 18. The Chargers were lurking around 13 points per game allowed for a while this season. They've been a little leaky on that side of the ball the last couple of weeks.
Not just a little leaky. I mean, that was, the number one defense in the NFL a couple of weeks ago, and they've been wrecked over the last couple of weeks by Baker Mayfield, and then I don't even want to say Bo Nix because I don't think Bo Nix necessarily wrecked them as much as just the Broncos, period. The Chargers defense, I think, needs something of a bounce-back game in this. Like, they need to show that actually – because, a few weeks ago we were saying, look, the Chargers are definitely a dangerous team in the playoffs. They got a really good defense. Justin Herbert is the quarterback who they're not necessarily leaning on a ton right now. They're operating with this ball control offense, and then Herbert as like the greatest game manager of all time. All of us, like over the last couple of weeks, the defense has been gashed. The offense has had no kind of run game absent J.K. Dobbins, and consequently Justin Herbert hasn't necessarily played his best football. The one good thing is, J.K. Dobbins is coming back. I mean, I think they've activated his return window. I don't know if we're getting him in this game or not, but in the postseason, the Chargers are going to have J.K. Dobbins, and I think that is a legitimate needle mover for them. But I think the defense really needs to show up against the Patriots offense that, is feisty with Drake May at quarterback, but isn't good because, no offensive line, no receivers.
I think the coaching dynamic here too. You've got a Chargers team that doesn't tend to make a ton of big mistakes, and the New England Patriots, who I think they're playing with a talent deficit. We've highlighted that in every preview and every review every single week. But they also play losing football, right? They fumbled a bunch against Baltimore. They handed Buffalo a defensive touchdown in the second half last week. So New England has to avoid those types of plays if they're going to pull the upset. It's just 4.5. It's not a massive spread because New England has played a lot of teams tough. They've just been one of those teams that also finds a way to lose, right? They find a way to not make that last play, whether it's a bad interception, an interception in overtime, as we've seen before, whatever it might be. So obviously I'm expecting the Chargers to win this game. And if you're, a New England fan, another week of please don't get hurt behind a bad offensive line, Drake May, and continue to show some positive signs against a good team. I know there's some people calling for Gerard Mayo, got to win one of these games. People are thinking maybe Gerard Mayo is a potential one and done candidate here. Yeah. Beat the Chargers. It's a weird big game for Gerard Mayo because the Bills also might be resting starters in Week 18 when they come to town. So this is like the last chance to maybe beat one good team on, to cap off the season here.
It's I don't know how you judge Gerard Mayo this year. Like, the Patriots stink. The Patriots were supposed to stink because they have no talent in a lot of important areas, right? So what do we judging him on. Like, Drake May looks great, but he didn't have anything to do with that necessarily in terms of selecting him, in terms of identifying him. Now, you can credit him for the job that he did in readying him to play. I mean, we made that point earlier in the season. You know, they were giving him a chunk of practice reps where normally that doesn't happen. Teams are giving the practice reps to the starter. Even when Brissett was the starter, the Patriots were sort of ring fencing a portion of the practice snaps for Drake May to theoretically ease him in. And he has been a big upgrade when they've put him in as the starter. So I guess that's a feather in Gerard Mayo's cap. But, you know, some of the things he said to the media have not necessarily reflected particularly well on him, I don't think. I just don't know what the measure for him is this year. Like, if you're Robert Kraft and you're looking at this, obviously you're not happy because you're a 3-win team right now, but how are you judging Gerard Mayo from this season?
I mean, I don't think it's wins and losses because he's 1 win away from matching Bill Belichick's total last year. And I've said a million times, same roster, different quarterback pretty much. But yeah, I think it's how you handle all that other stuff. I think ultimately he's back, but certainly helps the case if the Patriots pull the upset here this weekend. All right, Chargers by 4.5, winning their in to the playoffs. Where are you going with this one?
Going with the Chargers. I think they'll win and cover.
All right, Harry's also going to take the Chargers. I'll take New England to keep it close. No, I will not. I'm taking the Chargers. Going with you guys.
Wow.
Probably a smart move, given my record.
While sitting there in New England, you're going to go ahead and pick the Chargers, huh?
Well, I'm flying back to Cincinnati Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So I won't be in New England for the game.
Got it.
So that changes everything. Also going to be in Cincinnati on Saturday is the Denver Broncos, the second game of the Saturday triple header. We should go to the game, Sam. They let us in.
Yeah.
Bengals favored by 3 here. They're 7-8. Broncos are 9-6. So this is one of those scenarios. The Bengals have been rooting against the Broncos for weeks now, with an eye toward this game. This is their chance to do the unthinkable. So the Broncos win and they're in the AFC wildcard race. If the Bengals get the win here this week, they're still alive. They need to win out, including this game, and get at least a loss. Another loss from the Broncos against the Chiefs in Week 18, which looks less likely now that the Chiefs have clinched, and also have a loss from either the Dolphins or the Colts. Still a long shot for Cincinnati, but it all doesn't matter because if they don't win this one. A 12% chance of making the playoffs, even if they win it. So that's what we're looking at this weekend.
Yeah, I was asking the nerds out there what the playoff leverage for this game is, because it feels like a pretty, all these things of, if the Bengals are going to make the playoffs, they got to win out, and one of Denver or the Chargers got to lose out. But one of those games is in their control. Like, they can force 50% of that dynamic to happen by beating Denver. And then the other one is obviously a Kansas City Week 18 thing that they don't have control over. So it feels like it should be a really high leverage game. I guess because Kansas City are now probably likely to rest starters in Week 18, it might not be. But yeah, like this is one of those games where if they show up, but again, like my big concern with the Bengals that has repeatedly shown up this year is, okay, the offense is great. The offense is fantastic. Joe Burrow is putting a case together that is as good as any of the MVP candidates. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Burrow is the third name that we're never going to mention in the conversation because the team hasn't been good for most of the year. But the defense, when they've come up against half-decent teams, has tended to collapse. It's just not good enough. So that's the dynamic at play here. Like, I would expect Cincinnati's offense to be really good, Burrow to be great, them to move the ball, them to probably put up points against a good Denver defense. I just don't know if their defense can hold Denver to a low enough tally that it will matter.
Yeah, and the Bengals have played well against, lesser offenses or whatever, but they all year have relied on Burrow in the offense and, Higgins and Jamar Chase, Chase in particular having an outstanding season, Burrow having the MVP caliber season, like you said. So it'll be like a playoff atmosphere in Cincinnati, I think. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention my 96 Jags, Sam.
Of course.
And this is what you're looking at. The Jags in 96 were sitting there. They were 3-6. Then they were 4-7. They needed all kinds. They needed a win out from 4-7. And they did it. They go from 4-7 to 9-7 to finish the year, including Morton Anderson missing a 30-yard field goal that would have, sent them home, and then needed all these other teams to lose along the way, sneak into the playoffs. Then they go upset Buffalo in Buffalo. They go to Denver, beat number 1 seed Broncos. So every year I have to mention that if there's a team like the Bengals that if you look back, it's like, wait, this team was what were they at their worst? 4-8, whatever they were. They were completely dead and buried, and they pretty much still are, but they need all these other 96 Jags-like miracles to sneak into the playoffs. And if they do, now you're talking about, Cincinnati, who would they, maybe going to Buffalo or Baltimore or whatever, probably Buffalo, right, in the first round.
Right.
And you'd say they have a legit shot. They're not as good of a team. You're all the highlights that you've made here. Defense, inability to rush the passer, to stop anybody. Like, those are all true. But, having that type of quarterback and wide receiver combo, anything can happen. So Cincinnati probably has the most exciting, number 7 seeded game if they sneak into the playoffs. But it does look like a massive long shot here, even if they do pull off this win against Denver.
Yeah, look, when you have that offense, you're dangerous, if nothing else, right? Like, I don't expect it to be good enough to beat teams like Buffalo in the postseason, but if they got there, nobody is going to be happy seeing the Bengals come to town. Like, we should win this game, but God, if they, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and if those guys go nuts, like, we are going to need to be good to keep pace and to put up points ourselves. To me, the damaging stretch, like, obviously starting 1-4 is, you dug yourself a really deep hole to start the season. But they then won a bunch of games. They got themselves sort of back in the picture. But then they went on that 3-game losing skid to the Ravens, the Chargers, and the Steelers, each of which put up at least 34 points. That's the problem, right? Is that when you run up against a halfway competent team, and the Eagles a couple of weeks before that hung 37 on them. Like, when they run up against a halfway competent team on offense, I don't think that they've demonstrated yet this season that they can stop one of those, really. And now you're going to have to do that against Denver. Or, hope that you get one of those games where for some reason Bo Nix just collapses or throws the ball to the defense a bunch of times, or has a game where, he has a 2.4-yard average depth of target and it just doesn't work, right? Maybe they can rely on that, this Sean Payton, Bo Nix offense is still, it's a little bit fragile. Like, maybe they can hit the pressure points well enough that they can cause a really bad offensive performance, even if from a personnel standpoint you wouldn't think that they would do that. But that has been the limiting factor of this Bengals team, is that every single time this defense has run up against a halfway decent offense, they've given up like 35 points.
Just from a matchup perspective here, Jamar Chase versus Patrick Surtain, must-see TV when they're matched up. And if Surtain is chase around the field, high, big T. Higgins game potentially, right? So just something to keep an eye on when we're watching. It's Saturday at 4:30. Bengals favored by 3 here. Where are you going to go with this one, Sam?
The other thing, I think we might be getting Riley Moss back in the lineup for Denver, which is a big thing for that defense. Not just because, you really need the second corner opposite Surtain, but because you're now going up against the Bengals, who have a legitimate second receiver to go to, even if Surtain wins that one-on-one matchup with Jamar Chase all the time. That's going to be big that Riley Moss is now going up against T. Higgins and the other Bengals receivers. So that's a big development for Denver's defense. I'm going to go with, I think the Bengals will do it and at least force it to the final week of the season. I think Cincinnati wins and covers.
All right, you're taking Cincinnati. I'll also take Cincinnati to win and cover, as will Harry. So we're all in agreement on that one. Saturday at 4:30. We'll talk more about the third game of the Saturday tripleheader when we talk NFC. I got to tell you about our friends over at Harry's, though, first. The holiday special's over, but Harry still has a great deal for all of you to try their products. Sam and I have enjoyed their products, got a great shave, love the razor, love the presentation, everything that comes with Harry's here. German-engineered blades. They're made in their own factory. They stay sharp longer. You get customizable delivery options for scheduled refills for as low as $2. That's half what you pay for other big brands. You get a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and travel cover for just $3. What a deal. It's over at harrys.com/checkthemic. So get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3. Like I said, a great deal. $13 trial set, just $3. It's harrys.com/checkthemic. Again, harrys.com/checkthemic for a $3 trial set. All right, so we're going to stick in the AFC. The Indianapolis Colts at the New York Giants here. Colts, they need to win out here to even have a shot. They're favored by 7.5 against the Giants. Giants need to lose out to hold on to the number 1 overall pick, or at least that will assure them of the number 1 overall pick. 7-8 Colts against the 2-13 New York Giants.
10-game losing streak for the Giants, which is only the most in the NFL by 1. They only have the Bears by a win in the losing streak stakes. Yeah, it's funny. Like the Giants, theoretically, you want that number 1 pick massively, but you got to imagine losing out from 2 wins would get everybody fired, right? Like this is the tricky thing with like the Raiders. This came up with, right? Antonio Pierce saying like we're trying to win games. We don't care about draft spot, like, but somebody does. Somebody institutionally needs to care about the draft position because right now that is the biggest thing that can happen to this team. Same with the Giants. Like the Giants with no quarterback desperately want the pick of the quarterbacks in this upcoming draft. But clearly Brian Daboll doesn't want to lose out. Joe Shane probably doesn't want to lose out because he's got to be under pressure given the whole offseason Saquon, John Mara dynamic. This is the tricky thing about, what the Eagles did, right? The Eagles essentially did this a couple of years ago, deliberately pulled starters to lose a game to secure draft position. You do, however, need job security in order to make that move.
Yeah, I don't know how to, because I've said on the show the last couple of weeks, I don't know how to handle the Giants looking pretty bad these last few weeks. They had been competitive, but they opted into this, right? They opted out of Daniel Jones, who was keeping them competitive. They opted into Tommy Cutlets, who was a fun story last year, but as you kept mentioning, tapered off. Opted into Drew Lock. So they made this choice to essentially be less competitive down the stretch. So do the Maras hold that against Daboll and Shane? Like, oh, you guys keep losing, even though it was probably an organizational decision to move on from Daniel Jones and to be bad down the stretch here. So I don't know how to handle that. And then from a Colts perspective, run game has been outstanding the last couple of weeks, especially when Jonathan Taylor's running all the way through the red zone. So the 1-2 punch of Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor. I'll say this, when you draft an Anthony Richardson, you can have they put up 38 last week with 7 completions from Anthony Richardson. And so even at the end of the year, we're going to look at his stat line and it looks insane, right? It looks like something out of the 1970s, low completion percentage, high yards per completion, and just inefficient, ineffective from a down-to-down standpoint, but with big play potential. But you do have, I always talked about raising the floor of the offense with a running quarterback. I think we're seeing some of that from the Colts, especially in recent weeks. Richardson's running ability, Jonathan Taylor's running ability, a good offensive line. Even if it's an ugly passing attack or low-volume passing attack, you can still put points up. So intrigued with how the Colts have been playing, especially the last 2 weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, their run game is potent. Richardson is dangerous. He's dynamic as a runner. Jonathan Taylor is going nuts with the extra attention that you have to give to Anthony Richardson. So, yeah, that part of the offense, I think, is definitely cooking. And you're right, it does – it keeps you on the field. Like, that's the thing that the running game does. Like, if your quarterback – and Richardson is this, if your quarterback is wildly volatile, but – like he's volatile in terms of accuracy, but also volatile because his average depth of target is like 12 yards downfield. So It's volatile, inaccurate, but everything is like a kill shot. Everything he's doing is trying to make a big play. So he only needs to hit, 1 out of every 3. And it's still going to be and then the 4th play, he can run, keep them on the field. Now he's got another set of 3 to hit 1 of. So it is a weird offense. I think it's an unusual and not one that you would design like consciously. It's just where they are with Anthony Richardson right now. They've got this strange offense where they're trying to keep themselves on the field with the run game and then have Richardson just hit enough big play Hail Mary attempts effectively to keep them trucking and keep them putting up points. And yeah, against bad teams, it's having real success. And the Giants defense has not been particularly good.
Yeah, that's all I got on this one. I mean, the Giants they've lost, not only did they move on from Daniel Jones, lost Dexter Lawrence a few weeks ago. Was that on Thanksgiving? I mean, they have not been, they weren't great defensively even when he was out there, but certainly that hurts. Beat up on the defensive line. You've got a pretty decent, Brian Burns versus Bernard Ryman matchup on the edge, but, watching Indy, their run game if they can take care of business and at least stay in the playoff picture, because they're going to need help again from the Broncos or Chargers losing out here to have a shot.
Yeah, you would expect the Colts to win this pretty comfortably.
So it's 7.5. Will they cover the 7.5 this weekend?
I believe they will. I believe the Giants of all the teams in the NFL are the most checked out for the offseason.
I was also going to say, I mean, you hear that a lot about, the Cowboys are playing hard for Mike McCarthy. I don't even, does it matter with Daboll? I don't even know if they're not playing hard. They're just not good. Going back to the Titans thing, it's not an effort thing. But I'll take Indy to win and cover the 7.5 as well, as will Harry. Weird schedule this weekend. Miami Dolphins taking on the Cleveland Browns. It's one of only 2 games in the 4:00 window. So this will be going head-to-head with Packers Vikings. Again, Dolphins and Colts both tied with 7-8 records, still technically alive, need to win out and get help. Dolphins favored by 6.5 here at Cleveland. In Cleveland, the over-under is 39.5. Go ahead.
So late December in Cleveland, we're going to get a cold weather game for Tua, no?
I was hoping for a great narrative game here, Sam. Tua in Cleveland, right? We were going to have battling narratives. Battling narratives, right? You'd have, he can only beat bad teams, but he can't win in the cold. This would have been his opportunity. You're going to Cleveland. It's going to be 18 degrees, but it's the Browns. This was your opportunity to put a win in the under 40-degree category.
Yep.
But it's in the 50s in Cleveland this weekend.
Where are we on rain for Tua? Is that considered a weather problem for him? Because it's potentially, according to the weather I'm looking at, it's 55 and light rain.
I could use it. Yeah. I would use it. If it's negative, I'd use it against him.
Right. See, this is part of the problem, I think, with Tua, by the way, is that there's we can use now three different narratives that we can combine so that if he loses in any one of them, it's like, see, we said it. Can't do any of these things, right? You only need one of them to hit, and you're like, same narrative. Can't win when it's rainy and cold or against good teams.
Yeah. So there's not much to preview on this game in particular. I'm already in off-season mode. One of my favorite things, and I think why on Check the Mic we love the off-season so much, and we hope everybody else that listens will be sticking with us throughout the off-season, is the team building aspect. And every team faced with their own unique set of decisions and circumstances. And Miami is going to be one of my favorite teams to discuss because I think they're good, right? I think they're good, and I think they have a very good foundation. And we're half joking about Tua here, but there's some truth in this fact that he's in this loaded AFC where we keep rattling off MVP candidates. And in a vacuum, if you put a bunch of Tua's stats against those guys the last couple of years, he's kind of in the ballpark. But we know the reality behind it, where they're maybe top heavy against bad teams, and they've struggled to get over that hump. So how does Miami handle that this offseason? They've run the ball much better in recent weeks. Devin Achane, we talked about the great game he had last week against San Francisco. So it's not as simple as they can't run the ball, but they can't run the ball effectively against better teams, against better defensive fronts, and in those cold weather games. So I'm going to love breaking down Miami, and of course Cleveland has their, hey, we're going to roll with Deshaun Watson at least one more year situation and figure out if they're going to be drafting a QB. A lot of fun offseason discussions with these two teams. But for this week, it's Miami favored by 6.5 with technically some playoff aspirations still on the line here.
Yeah. And even if, even absent playoff aspirations, I think Miami is still motivated to prove that they were or are a good team and that they got unlucky, losing their quarterback for a month and not being able to function essentially without Tua. I think because they're, because of all this narrative stuff and they don't beat good teams and they don't win in the cold, I think this team, Mike McDaniel, I think is under more pressure than a guy with his resume probably should be under, right? I think it is actually quite important for him to finish this season well and have a good performance. And I think the team's probably aware of that. They like Mike McDaniel. They think he's a good coach. They don't want this guy to get fired because they didn't show up for the last couple of games of the season. And somehow it's like, oh, look, this is a team that's not going anywhere. They've hit their ceiling and they're heading backwards already. This team, I think, wants to finish strong. And I think they will show up against the Browns, who, are in this situation where absent Jameis, they just don't have a functional quarterback. DTR, Bailey Zappi, doesn't really matter. It's not working without at least the YOLO, wheel of fortune that is Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I don't mind them seeing what they have in DTR these last few weeks. It's just he hasn't shown anything yet,
right?
As we highlighted last week since his first preseason.
Well, also, they're all like everyone's dealing with it. Like Jameis has got a shoulder injury. DTR hurt himself in that last game. Like they're in this. I mean, I don't know if I believe in karma necessarily, but if you did, this would be a pretty good piece of evidence for its existence. Like you trade your soul and everything else for Deshaun Watson to be your quarterback, and right now you're trying to choose between Bailey Zappi, DTR, or a busted up Jameis Winston as your final quarterback for the last couple of games of the season.
Well, that's just what happens in Week 17 games. If you're everybody loves rooting for other people's fantasy teams. If you're rooting for producer Janko being in the finals here, he needs a big game from Jerome Ford. So we're rooting for Janko and Jerome Ford, who has looked really explosive these last couple of weeks. Couple big plays against the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago. Last week against Cincinnati that set them up before they got stuffed on the goal line. So there's something to watch from a Cleveland perspective.
Obviously, anytime you're watching Myles Garrett, it's fun. Myles Garrett against Miami offensive line is a pretty fun matchup. Defensive player of the year this year feels wide open. I mean, everyone's been focusing on MVP and the narratives there. Like, who the hell is defensive player of the year this year?
I'm going to have to go back and look closer at it. Yeah, it's not even like, because none of the edge rushers are even having their usual dominant seasons where TJ Watt doesn't have, a million sacks, and Garrett isn't dominating the same way he has at other times. Micah Parsons got hurt. So it is a little bit more. Dexter Lawrence got hurt. So it is a little bit more difficult here. Maybe they just give it to Chris Jones, even though they just gave up 10 without him. Yeah. Give it to Chris Jones because they're good defensively. I'll have to look closer. All right. Who are you picking here?
Who am I picking?
I kind of hope it rains.
Kind of hope
looking
it rains.
For some weather here.
For the narrative, or just because rain?
I want to see Tua, chuck it around in the rain and do a good job with it.
Okay. I'm going to go with the Dolphins. As I said, I believe that they will continue to play hard, and I believe that the Browns' quarterback situation is a disaster. So
yeah, fair. I'll take the Dolphins as well, as will Harry. Last AFC game to discuss here: New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills clinched the 2 seed here with a win. They're 12-3, and they're battling the Ravens. The Ravens have the tiebreaker, so they just need one Ravens loss or a win. So Bills going for the 2 seed here. Jets battling for draft positioning here. They're 4-11 and currently at number 8 in the draft positioning, tied at 4-11 with the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears.
That's as far as they can slip, though, right? To the 3 seed?
Yeah, because I don't think the Texans can overcome the Bills at this point. So it's either a 2 or a 3, and you're talking playing round 1, any of those wild card teams that are at the very end. So Chargers, Broncos.
Yeah.
There's the only difference though is the home game, right? So we're all assuming Buffalo and Baltimore are going to win their first round matchups. We're assuming Baltimore is going to hold on and win the AFC North here, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about Buffalo and Baltimore. They played earlier this year in Baltimore. Is that game in Buffalo or is it in Baltimore?
Right.
That's what effectively, and that's big. That's obviously a big thing that's on the line here.
But that's effectively what we are determining that this game is worth. Like, this game is for whether or not you want to play the Ravens at home or in the road in the second round of the playoffs. Once you win your wild card performance,
that's correct.
Yeah. So it is pretty insignificant, but on the other hand, it's not that much to be fighting for. From the Bills' perspective, remember, they're coming off a rough performance where that game was weirdly close when it had no business. It was a 14.5-point spread. It ended up being a really close game. And coming out of that game, I'm not concerned after one of those. If it happened again, I would start to get more concerned. I mean, if Kansas City goes into the playoffs cooking the way they are, Baltimore looks spectacular right now. If the Bills have another game where suddenly the Jets catch fire on offense and they're able to move the ball against Kaiir Elam and blah, blah, blah. And even if, Buffalo's offense plays well, I would start getting a little bit concerned at that point. So I think it's a pretty big game for them to bounce back and show that, look, last week was a weird division game against the Patriots and that happens, but we're still really good. Particularly the defensive side, which is, that got kind of attacked last week.
So defensively, the players who are questionable for Buffalo, and a bunch of these guys missed the last couple of weeks. Taylor Rapp at safety, Matt Milano at linebacker, DeMar Hamlin at safety, Rasul Douglas at corner. I think Douglas may be as big as anybody as far as health goes. That's the other interesting dynamic for Buffalo here, right? If they can win this game, then they can rest their starters in Week 18, essentially have 2 weeks off going into hosting that round one game. So just again, to remind people, they were depleted offensively last year, lost to Kansas City by 3 in that divisional round. They're a play away from winning, right? Josh Allen misses a potential game-ending touchdown. They were that close, and they were completely beat up on the defensive side of the ball. So I think they're going to remember that. And health is going to be at a premium. And I think that has been a big part of their defensive failures over these last few weeks here.
And Josh Allen is dealing with this broken hand. Like, I think they would love to have the opportunity to rest him for a week and try and, get that as healthy as they can get it going into the postseason. So I think they would love a really good, dominant statement win performance in this game. So it is, I think, as much as not that much is on the line, I think you can find a bunch of little ancillary things that are.
It does also feel like one of those games over these next couple of weeks, if they could, you want to keep Allen healthy. I still don't love the Jets' run defense. James Cook, he was rattling off some big runs last week. This could be another one of those games that I think has solidified the Bills' season or been a defining characteristic of the Bills' season, I should say. Even though Allen's the favorite to win MVP, this is the most help he's gotten offensively. Not so much as far as having good playmakers, but the style of it, right? They've had run game wins where they relied heavily on the run game. They've had a lot of it's a much more yak-heavy offense. They're scheming it up better than they have in recent years, getting their playmakers into space. I don't know how much momentum and playing well. I saw people talking about, hey, do you want Josh Allen to win the MVP and have momentum going into the playoffs, for whatever that's worth? Do you want to play this out and feel good, going into Week 18 and then into the playoffs? Maybe, you might want to finish on a high note, beat your a division rival, and go out strong. So I think the Bills bring their best this week, try to get this game done, rest up in Week 18, and then host their playoff game. And then from a Jets perspective, we had highlighted for a few weeks, like Rodgers thrown the ball pretty well, even early last week against the Rams, threw the ball really well early on and then hit a lull. They've been inconsistent, and for the millionth time, that offense, they're putting themselves into low percentage situations where the special guys have to play special, and if they don't, they're they fall apart like they did in the second half against the Rams.
It also feels at this stage, now that everything, the season is done, the season has been an embarrassment for them. It also feels like Rodgers sort of I was kind of curious, once they reached the point where they were mathematically eliminated, it was definitely a disaster and not going to work. What would Rodgers' reaction to that be on the field, right? Would he suddenly go nuts now that all the pressure was off and you get, amazing version of Rodgers or whatever? If there's been a change, it almost feels like now that it's all done, he's just decided, you know what, I'm just going to feed Davante Adams 25 targets a game. Why not? Yeah. I'm going to give the ball to my buddy every play. So the last couple of weeks, it's been just Davante Adams getting all of the targets for this offense. And obviously Garrett Wilson's had some as well. But what is Adams' targets over the last couple of weeks? It must be insane. So
if you're but I don't know, man. I don't want to get into it too much. But that was when we were team building for the Packers at the end of the Rodgers era. It was like, man, just get Davante Adams at 2. Just get him a complimentary piece. And in hindsight, I don't even know if that would have mattered. I don't know if Rodgers, even if, supposedly they would have loved to have Brandon Ayuk that one year that they got Jordan Love and he goes off the board. And, would Brandon Ayuk actually have gotten the right targets as the number 2 opposite Davante Adams, or would Rodgers still just feed his buddy and they would feel, too dependent on him? Because they had that one year. It was like, those were the 2 guys. Jair Alexander had a great season for Green Bay, and that was it. It was just 3 elite players, and that was it.
Right.
It is funny, though. That's where they're trending right now, just feeding his buddy Davante.
Yeah. I mean, he's had 40-plus targets in the last 4 games. But against this Bills defense, the secondary is banged up, like corner in particular. Kyer Elam was out there having to play football again last week. and that was a problem against Keishon Butte, let alone Devontae Adams, right? Like, that could be an area, like, it's far from a smart game plan as a general, like as an offensive scheme. It's not necessarily what you want to draw up, but it might actually be weirdly productive against this Buffalo defense that's vulnerable at or at least on last week's evidence.
All right, man, let's make some picks here. As I said, the one other thing to highlight, if the off chance Kansas City loses in the first round, I don't see that happening. The other piece here is not just a home game against the Ravens. You'd have the AFC Championship at home as well. So somewhat significant. So that's what Buffalo's playing for, trying to lock up the 2 seed. They're favored by 9.5. Where are you going to go with this one?
I am going to bounce. I'm going to rely on a Buffalo bounce back. I think that they win, and they win comfortably, and I'm giving them one shot at this, right? If they don't show up this week, then I'm officially concerned.
All right, I'll take the Jets. Harry's going to take the Bills. Jets to cover. I mean, I think the Bills win this game. 9.5 is a lot, and I think the Jets are at least playing competitive football, even if they're still overall finding ways to lose in the end. All right, got to tell you about our friends over at PFF. You know, the key to winning your fantasy league or making the right bets, well, it's all about having the best data. That's where PFF Plus comes in. With PFF Plus, you're not just getting surface-level stats, you're getting insights that power winning decisions. From in-depth fantasy projections to market-beating betting angles, PFF Plus has everything you need to stay ahead. So picture having access to player grades, positional matchup charts, and rankings that give you the upper hand on your competition, all backed by PFF's world-class data. So whether you're making a crucial start-sit decision or choosing a side, make sure you're doing it with the best intel out there. Visit PFF.com to become a member today. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. And as always, Sam and I know PFF as well as anybody. Helped build that years ago with all of our friends over there. So shout out to our friends over at PFF, still doing great work, and still love referencing the grades, stats, and information that comes from PFF Plus. All right, let's get to the NFC and relevant playoff games. Maybe none bigger than the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. Not so much for getting into the playoffs, but playoff positioning. The Minnesota Vikings have the number 1 seed potentially on the line here. They need to win out, and it's not going to be easy against the Packers and against the Lions over the next 2 weeks. The 13-2 Vikings against the 11-4 Green Bay Packers. Of course, the Vikings did win their first matchup in Green Bay.
Yeah, this is classic cliche. These are real litmus test games for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, they've done a really good job of winning these tight one-score games. We were talking about, is that a skill? Is that something Kevin O'Connell is able to instill in his team? You're likely to get another couple of those with these 2 games against Green Bay and then Detroit. The Packers are like the Ravens. They're like the Chiefs. They seem to be coming good right at the right time. Again, I think they started the run a bit earlier last season, or it was a little more conclusive, but it definitely looks like it's happening now. They were very, very good last week. Nate Tice on Twitter, friend of the show, had a post that the Packers offense post week 10 bye week is 3rd in EPA per play, 4th in yards per play, 4th in explosive play rate, 4th in success rate, and their defense in the same time span is 4th in EPA per play, 3rd in yards per play, and then 8th in both explosive play rate and success rate. This is a team that looks as good as any team in that conference right now. It just so happens that they were sufficiently bad in the first half. They were sufficiently not as impressive in the first half that they're 3rd in their own division.
Yeah, and they were still winning a lot in the first half.
That's
right?
what I mean. Yeah, I checked myself. They weren't. It's not like they were bad. They just weren't as dominant as Detroit, certainly, and then Minnesota.
You also had Jordan Love injured in week 1.
Yeah.
When he came back, including for this matchup, when he came back for this matchup, was banged up, had a couple turnovers early. Green Bay came back late. Sometimes we diminish the late comebacks from a team when it's actually, skill. It's not just, teams are playing prevent, like it's just balancing of the game. So Green Bay's been a tough team to peg, I think, for a while. They're the Toyotathon team, Sam. Well, always better in the second half, and this is the second straight year we've seen them starting to get better and better as we head toward the playoffs.
Their only losses this season, they're 11-4, and all 4 of their losses are against 3 teams vying for the number 1 seed in the NFC, right? Like they lost. Remember, the the very first game of the season for them in Brazil, they lost that incredibly close game to Philadelphia where Jordan Love got hurt. They lost to the Vikings by 2 points the first time around, and then they've lost twice to the Detroit Lions. But like, this is an undefeated team absent games against number 1 seed contenders in the NFC.
I've been wrong a lot, as you know, but maybe the most wrong I've been was coming out of the Brazil game where I said I was unimpressed by both teams.
Yes.
The Eagles and the Packers.
That's true. Yeah.
As far as instant reactions go,
not a great takeaway.
But I was like, I'm out on both teams. I didn't say I was out, but I was like unimpressed after week 1 by both the Packers and the Eagles. And that, kind of stood strong for like a week or two.
Yeah.
And then proven wrong. The Sam Darnold narrative too. Again, a fun offseason discussion with what the Vikings do with Sam Darnold, but this will not take anything away from what he's done to this point. I've raved about him since we got through the week 3 buffer.
Right.
I've raved about Darnold since that point, when warranted, and it was other than a game or two, far more warranted than not. Loved watching him play. Loved watching him attack downfield and get all those playmakers involved. But this is a serious run right now. If you're Sam Darnold and you're vying to either be the next Vikings quarterback again next year, re-signed, or going somewhere else, you got Green Bay this week, you have Detroit week 18, then you have the playoffs, then you're right in. Maybe you get a bye if you win both games, but got a run here for Sam Darnold, and this isn't a litmus test or anything. I think he's proven, right? He can be that guy. But yeah, he's going to have to go out there and continue to make big time throws down the field, limit some of those bad plays, make big throws under pressure. I've loved watching Darnold's development this week, but a fascinating run for a guy that has rejuvenated his career and now gets as serious of a test as you can get with these 2 division games and then the playoffs lurking right around the corner.
It's a huge game for both teams, I think, not because it matters that much for them winning, though there's a ton on the line for Minnesota. I mean, the Vikings are absolutely in contention for the 1 seed, but they're also probably likely to get the 5 seed. Like if this doesn't go their way, they're on the road in the first week of the season versus being at home all the way through the playoffs and not having to play that first week. I mean, in terms of what's on the line, absent just getting into the playoffs where there's a few teams fighting for that, the Vikings have as much on the line in terms of the playoffs, and Detroit does as well, than anybody. Green Bay can't get to the 1 seed. They can't win the division, so there's not as much on the line for them. But it's huge in terms of these teams being able to demonstrate, like do what the Chiefs are doing right now, right? Demonstrate that we are the class of this field. We are the 1 seed. We are favorites for the 3-peat. We are Super Bowl favorites, period. I mean, Minnesota's been fantastic. They've wildly overachieved expectations. Darnold looks great. They've done a really good job of winning these 1-score games. I think it still feels a little underlying fragile. I don't know that anyone is really conclusively saying that they are this dominant football team that expects to win or get to the Super Bowl. But Detroit's defense is really banged up. Like, they are vulnerable in a way they might not have been earlier in the season. Philadelphia looks really good. If Minnesota, is really impressive in these final 2 games, locks up 2 wins in the 1 seed, that's a statement by them. If they lose one or both of these games and kind of just stumble their way to the postseason, I think they're less of a threat to Philadelphia. But equally, if Green Bay does the same thing, right? If they put a statement win out here against Minnesota and then they're able to win and go into the postseason with this absolute wave of momentum with the second half of the season, they become real contenders.
Yeah, I mean, it's a playoff matchup, man. I love it. It's a playoff caliber matchup. Go back to the week 4 game. There was a lot of back and forth. I thought Darnold put the ball in harm's way a couple times, but as he's done all season, bounced back and had drives to answer, follow up on failures, and had big time throws outside the numbers. I thought Green Bay did a nice job scheming it up a couple times, created a strip sack on Darnold. Similarly, the Vikings were forcing turnovers on Jordan Love. Again, he was coming off of his injury. Different dynamic with the teams too, where Green Bay they want to run the ball with Jacobs, spread the ball around to a plethora of playmakers. Where Minnesota, You know the top three. You know who the top three are. You don't know who's going to kill you any given week.
Right.
Between Jordan Jefferson, Jordan Addison, or TJ Hawkinson. But, that trio, as I've said, they're the best in the NFL. I think as a trio, with Aaron Jones running the ball and Darnold running the show. So I just love this matchup. And Flores and his run defense against Josh Jacobs and the Packers. You mentioned the Packers offensive stats and EPA and everything. Jacobs has been their workhorse throughout this season, and so finding that balance of, banging their head against the wall against a good run defense or, sticking with what they want to do. I want to see what that looks like game plan wise.
The big area I think for Minnesota is, can the interior of that offensive line hold up against Green Bay? That's the area where I think the Vikings and the Seahawks are similar. Like, it's a very good team top to bottom, but the one weakness, the one bullseye on that team is the interior of the offensive line. And every now and again, the Vikings run up against a team that's able to attack that group. Green Bay, I think, has the horses up front to do that. They're stronger on the edge than they are in the middle in terms of defensive line, defensive front, pass rush, all those things. But they can definitely get after that interior group. So, can they expose that group, put Sam Darnold under pressure, force him to make, low percentage plays? And he might make some of them. I mean, he did against Seattle, but that's the weakness of this team if the Packers rather are able to attack it, particularly Garrett Bradbury at center. I mean, he's got a PFF pass blocking grade this season under 50. He's given up 33 total pressures, which for a center is a massively high number. That's the area of vulnerability for the Vikings.
And so along those lines, Edger and Cooper, can't talk about the Packers without mentioning what he's done as a rookie linebacker. Always been calling for more snaps from Cooper. He's been awesome all season, but in particular the last couple of weeks when asked to do a little bit more. He's got 4 sacks. Packers did a really nice job on the strip sack on Darnold, the way they designed their blitzes. So you're right. I think the Packers finding ways, blitzing or, their pass rush up front, trying to create some turnovers is going to be huge here. As I mentioned earlier too, this is only going head to head with Browns and Dolphins, two games in the 4 p.m. window. So pretty good, spotlight game for both teams here. 4:25 on Sunday. It's Minnesota by 1.5 at home. Where are you going to go with this one, Sam?
I'm going to go with the Packers. I think they might grab a win on the road and really shake up this picture.
Oh boy, I'm going to take Minnesota. So hold on. I got Minnesota here. Yeah, I'll take them to cover the 1.5. Harry will also take the Vikings here. Can't wait for that one though.
The Green Bay winning, by the way, keeps alive that possibility that all 3 teams in the NFC North could finish with at least 13 wins, which would be absurd. Like, it literally never happened before, but also, like, 13 wins is a lot. Even in a 17-game schedule, to have 3 of them come out of the same division would be nuts.
That was one thing we were kind of right about. We thought 2 divisions would be loaded, AFC North and NFC North. Not this loaded. Also thought the Bears might, sneak a few more than 4 wins. But, Man, never seen anything like this with 3 teams in one division being this good. All right, let's go. Detroit Lions at the San Francisco 49ers. This one's Monday Night Football this week, Sam. Lions favored by 3.5 here. They're 13-2. Niners are 6-9. I know we expected this to be a much more competitive, better looking game when we started the season, but Lions still have that number 1 seed to play for. And I'll tell you what we got to play for here on Check the Mic is all of you. 33% of you subscribing so far. We got a little subscribe button right there. Just click it. Just click the subscribe button. This worked the other day. A bunch of you were like, hey, I'm not subscribed. I want to be. So just click the button right now. We appreciate everybody that has joined us this week and will continue to join going forward with Check the Mic. Lions favored by 3.5 here. They got to win this game and then again go to play the Vikings in week 18 to solidify the number 1 overall seed.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they've been so good this season, and they're still not locked in for anything yet, including the division. It's bizarre. Like, they've been so good this year. My concern, obviously, for Detroit is just how banged up that defense is, and are they in danger of being one of those teams that is just no longer the team that they were supposed to be, or that they were for most of the season, because they've just been chipped away at that defense from an injury standpoint. Didn't really matter last week against Chicago because the Bears didn't have enough to execute that comeback. And maybe it won't matter against the 49ers because they're still banged up and not particularly good this year. But it might matter in the postseason or against a team like the Vikings. So, Detroit's offense is still phenomenal. Their offensive line, even without David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield is dynamic, explosive, dangerous. Jameson Williams, deep play threat. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, the offense is great. The question is the defense. Can they just do enough to keep this team competitive so that the offense, when it puts up 30 points, is good enough to win?
Yeah, I mean, that's that, getting healthy down the stretch here for Detroit, seeing what they can get back, what they're going to roll into the playoffs with. I think that's where the number one seed, is as important. It's important for everybody, but having that extra week of rest is going to be massive, I think, for Detroit, making sure that they're good to go from a playoff perspective. And also, I don't want to say the throw the records out the window deal. San Francisco could be dangerous in any given week. They just lost to Miami last week, and Miami kind of ran away with it at the end. But there were points where George Kittle looked as good as ever. Deebo Samuel, kind of a throwback game. They needed him out of the backfield. They're down to RB5 in the backfield in San Francisco. So Deebo's back in the backfield, taking some carries, looking good after the catch. I mean, they're still dangerous in any given week. And look, I think every game is important for Brock Purdy at this point, even if there's nothing on the line, just going out there and showing that he's not going to completely collapse with missing pieces around him. So I think San Francisco, it'll be interesting to see how hard they play right now. And the stat that I've highlighted throughout Kyle Shanahan's tenure is finally out the window now. He is, for the first time ever, not made the NFC Championship in a year where he's had his starting quarterback, for the majority of the time. Every other time that Jimmy Garoppolo got through the season, his handpicked starter, the other times that Brock Purdy got through the season as his starter, and then the one time that Garoppolo got hurt and Purdy took over, they made it to the NFC Championship. An incredible run essentially ended this year by the Niners. Now, it ended with other injuries to other key players or whatever, but that's been Kyle Shanahan, who took over in 2017 for the Niners. When he's had his starting quarterback, it's been NFC Championship as a floor. And this is the worst season, obviously, that they've had, given the fact that they've still had their starting quarterback for the majority of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big difference. Like, it's weird because he has had bad seasons before for the 49ers. It's just that they've come with quarterback injuries that have taken his starter out for a lot of the season. You're like, well, yeah, but look, today's NFL, if you don't have your starting quarterback, 4 wins, 6 wins, that's kind of expected, right? Well, now you did have your starting quarterback for the whole one. He's on the cusp of a giant contract, and you still may only win 6 games for the entire season. Not a good year for San Francisco, obviously. I think you're right. They are definitely still dangerous. It's interesting, you talk once these teams are eliminated, right? How do they respond to that? Do they actually still play hard? Are they checked out? Are they mentally on the beach already? As soon as the 49ers were officially eliminated, I think they basically shut down Trent Williams and said, yeah, he's done now for the year. Maybe they were trying to get him back, well, as long as they were still theoretically able to make the postseason. As soon as that was no longer a reality, it's like, yeah, Trent's not coming back. So, I mean, that's the smart thing to do. Like, there's no point trying to rush him back for a meaningless game late in the year. But is that the kind of thing that signals, hey, guys, the season's done. Let's pack it up here. We got to – and you're going to get that kind of performance from the 49ers where they visibly look like a team that's checked out because they're done? Maybe. And particularly against a team like Detroit, if there's anything of that in the air, the Lions offense will rack up a ton of points, and the defense at least is well coached, if not able to hang in terms of personnel. So I think that's something to watch for this team. Like, do the 49ers look visibly checked out in this game, or are they going to be dangerous? Are they going to put up some points and some vintage sort of Shanahan offense?
Me, Sam, I tend to downplay the touchy-feely aspect of football, and some of that gets elevated. I do wonder, though, Dan Campbell's Lions, like, they're going to be a fascinating case study. I think everybody looking for a new head coach is going to be thinking about the Dan Campbell experience, right? A guy that wasn't an offensive guru, that's, motivational guy, leader of men type of figurehead, right?
Yeah. In
his Lions, when they got eliminated from the playoffs a couple years ago, played as hard as they could to beat the Packers on Sunday Night Football and knock the Packers out of the playoffs. And it, you could go back and say that helped propel the Lions, that attitude, that style of play to where they are right now. Might be interesting when you look at Shanahan and some of these other coaches that are eliminated down the stretch here. At least, maybe the NFL is going to look at that a little bit more. The other aspect of this is if Minnesota does lose, remember, this is Monday Night Football. So if Minnesota does lose on Sunday to the Packers, which is very possible, this game does clinch Detroit the number 1 seed. And then they're set up to potentially rest in week 18 and rest. So they might have 2 full weeks of rest. They could earn it with a win here against San Francisco if the Packers beat the Vikings. So that's what's on the line here. Also, of course, a rematch of last year's NFC Championship when the Lions were up, was it 24-7 before blowing that lead. And I think they have the ability to do that again, get up early. I think that's part of their strategy as far as the defense goes. Not that that's a strategy. Hey, win early. But they've got the trick plays, the aggressiveness, the various playmakers to attack early and often. And I think they'll have some success against this Niners defense. Last thing to keep an eye on, too, is Jahmyr Gibbs, his workload, over 20 carries last week. And so if they can rest for a couple weeks, maybe it doesn't matter as much. But do you want to beat up a Jahmyr Gibbs with 20-plus carries every week heading into the playoffs? I don't know if you want that. He's still going to be at his best, I think. Not sporadically, but allowing him to create those big plays, it's going to be interesting seeing his workload as well.
Yeah, and Detroit, they are getting some players back from injury, so them being able to rest players for an extra week and 2 weeks with the bye week would be huge for them if they're able to wrap this up.
All right, man. Lions by 3.5 here. Monday Night Football in San Francisco. Where are you going with this one?
I believe in the Lions. I think they're going to have a good performance. They're going to try and do everything they can to wrap this up. I think they'll win and cover.
All right, Harry agrees. We're all going with the Lions to cover the 3.5 Monday Night Football. Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles fell behind last week in the race for the number 1 overall seed. They're 12-3 now. Cowboys 7-8. Last time these teams played, Eagles really whooped them. It was Cooper Kupp's first or second start. Cowboys didn't really have much of a shot. It's a little bit more competitive Dallas team right now, but it's still the Eagles favored by 7.5 here.
Yeah, the rusty Cooper Rush in that game. I think, Cooper Rush has definitely been playing better football the last couple of weeks, but honestly, the big difference for Dallas has been the defense. Like Micah Parsons being back, Deron Bland, they're getting their star playmakers back on defense, I think has been the single biggest change for this Dallas team, which is definitely more dangerous than they were the first time they played the Eagles and they just got absolutely wrecked. I'm kind of intrigued by this game actually now with those playmakers back on that side of the ball.
Yeah, the way Dallas is, they've had flashes rushing the passer the last few weeks against, that'll be interesting against Philadelphia. You still have Jalen Hurts in concussion protocol as well, so that's going to really change this dynamic. They have signed Ian Book to the practice squad, and Jalen Hurts, as of yesterday, still did not participate on the practice report. So we're sitting here on Thursday. There's still time for Jalen Hurts to be cleared, but dwindling a little bit. You also have Kenny Pickett limited with a rib injury.
Yeah.
So it could be Tanner McKee. Where's Renner? Get Renner back out here. It could be a little Tanner McKee time as well for Philadelphia if both guys couldn't go.
I was trying to think of what the worst insurance policy you can get is, like liability only auto insurance or whatever. Like what is the worst insurance policy in existence? Because that's what it feels like Ian Book is, right? We don't have Jalen Hurts is a risk. He might not play. What can we get to insure against that? What about Ian Book? Doesn't feel like it's quite achieving that,
I love when you don't pull punches. Ian Book. The Saints had a little throwback to the Ian Book Monday night game the other day. Just awful, terrible, no shot on offense Monday night football game.
I can't believe that running plays in the freezer didn't help with that game.
We'll get there. We won't spend a lot of time, but we'll get there. Anyway, the Jalen Hurts thing will be interesting to watch. I still think a Kenny Pickett-led Eagles team is better, gets this win. Going into the narrative, momentum, and all that stuff thing, it's certainly not last year. It's not last year. But if the Eagles lose this one, right?
Collapse
they've
coming?
got the what's that?
Collapse coming?
No. They've got the Giants the last week. They should win that one at least. But they had the Giants on Christmas last year. It still lost. So the Eagles, I don't think, want to go into the playoffs with the lack of quote unquote momentum. They do officially clinch the NFC East with a win in this one. So I think they need this to avoid any kind of doubt going into the playoffs, where last year they were one of the worst teams in the NFL and played like it in round one.
Yeah. I agree. I think the Eagles are too good.
They're not that. Like, they're not anything close to the way they played the whole second half of last year. I'm just saying, if they end with like a losing 2 out of 3 or 3 in a row, how does that affect them mentally going into the playoffs?
You know, I'm always rooting for the funniest possible outcome. Like, can you imagine how hilarious it would be if, okay, this week maybe Jalen Hurts is in the concussion protocol for longer. They're stuck without a quarterback, or a quarterback gets hurt. Ian Book has to rescue them. They lose to Dallas. That's understandable. Now you've lost 2. Final week of the season. Don't worry, we'll get it back. It's against the Giants. Somehow they lose against the Giants. The Eagles then limp into the playoffs on the back of 3 straight defeats. The hysteria surrounding that would be off the charts. Meanwhile, the Giants, snapping a whatever that is 12-game losing skid, win the final week of the season, which takes them out of the number 1 overall pick. Everybody loses. Everybody is hysterical about it. That would be all-time comedy.
You're rooting for that level of madness.
Yeah.
That level of madness, huh? Oh, man. I saw Shefty. People are highlighting Shefty saying, oh, Saquon shouldn't go for the record. They should rest everybody and let the Giants win, and then they lose out on their quarterback in week 18. Not that you would ever let someone win in the NFL. That is quite illegal.
Right.
You know?
That would be pretty funny, though.
But you could sit players.
Yeah.
Anyway, Philly, just a weird game last week against Washington, getting 5 turnovers and losing, right? So the same, the opposite of what Washington did. How do you turn the ball over 5 times and still lose? So Philly's got something to play for, something to bounce back from. Defense showed some issues despite getting all those turnovers, right? They ended up giving up the game-ending drive there, and they had been one of the better defenses in the league this season. So I think, their pass rush against Dallas, getting to Cooper Rush, and they're still a better team, but I think everybody else has to step up here, especially if it's Kenny Pickett time. Yeah,
I agree generally. I think that the Eagles they're much better than a year ago. They're not demonstrating that they're about to collapse. I don't think it's not the same as it was last year, where for a while it was looking really, really rough, and everyone was like, are they going to pull out of this? And no, this is just a genuine tailspin that they're going to tank the season this way. It's not the same. Like, they had a bad performance last week against Washington and didn't have their quarterback, and somehow, and so came off on the losing end against a pretty good team. It would, however, put a ton of pressure on them if they had another bad performance consecutively and didn't. Some either weren't convincing in this game or actually did manage to lose. It would definitely ramp up the pressure, even if they're not the same team. So I think it's a pretty big game for them to show that last week was just a fluke. I think Dallas are dangerous. The defensive side can cause problems. The offense can put up points. I think Dallas's concern is, though, like, CeeDee Lamb has been dealing with that busted shoulder for a long time. We saw how dangerous that is last week. If he just falls wrong on it, he's in trouble for the game. If Dallas with CeeDee Lamb is a dangerous offense. You take CeeDee Lamb out of the lineup, and it's like, Jalen Tolbert, it might be their number 1 receiver at that point. That gets a lot rockier very quickly. So, that his health, CeeDee Lamb's health, is always a big thing going into these games. If he stays healthy, though, I think this could be a close game.
I got a funny narrative for you.
Okay.
Or a funny scenario for you. The Dallas Cowboys win their last 2 games. Finish at 9-8. They would have won their last 4.
Yeah.
6 out of their last 7. They would have beaten their last 3 wins would be against playoff caliber Tampa Bay Bucks. We'll see if they end up in the playoffs.
Right.
And then the Eagles and Commanders, 2 playoff teams, division teams.
Yeah. Commanders
twice in those 6 wins. Cooper Rush 6-1 down the stretch here.
Yeah.
Just saying. That'd be some fodder. Mike McCarthy's expiring contract, but they finished strong. They played hard, but it wasn't just playing hard. They won 6 out of 7 to finish the season if they could pull that off.
I mean, whether or not that happens, I told you this last week, right? I think Jerry Jones is looking for excuses to extend Mike McCarthy. Like, any sign that, like, this is actually going to work, I think he's looking for that. Like, he is looking for the opportunity to do what he wants to do anyway, which is re-sign Mike McCarthy, give it a go, give it another go at Dak at quarterback. I honestly think that's what he's looking for. So, yeah, Dallas gives him any glimmer of light that could be an avenue without just a complete shit show. I think he's willing to jump on it.
And then there's some just shouty show goodness. It'd be like, well, Cooper Rush 6-1 down the stretch. Cooper Rush didn't lose 44-19 against the Saints. Dak Prescott did.
Yeah.
Who lost 47-9 against the Lions? Dak did. Who got down 3 scores at San Francisco on Sunday Night Football and barely got back within a score? Dak. Dak did all that stuff. Not Cooper Rush. Once Cooper Rush got settled in, 6-1 as a starter. So that's what's on the line here this week. Just pointing out both sides here. Most importantly, though, the NFC East on the line for Philadelphia, favored by 7.5. Where are you going to go with this one?
I'm going to go with Dallas. I think they'll keep it close. So I think they'll keep it within that score line.
I will as well. Dallas playing tough the last couple weeks. They are playing much better. Cooper Rush's Cowboys. Atlanta Falcons and the Washington Commanders. A lot on the line in this one as well. Falcons in control right now in the NFC South. Have to beat Washington and Carolina over the next couple weeks to lock up the NFC South. The Commanders favored by 4.5 here. They're 10-5 going up against the 8-7 Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, so obviously we get week 2 of Michael Penix Jr. at quarterback. A surprising number of people last week were the immediate replies of, well, it was against the Giants, right? Yeah, Michael Penix Jr. was quite impressive as a debut. It's like, yeah, against the Giants, like, it doesn't count. Yeah, okay, it's definitely a relevant data point. Like, the Giants are not good. Their defense is not good. They're not, however, it's not like the Panthers early in the season where they're so bad you literally have to caveat that this data point actually is skewed. It doesn't really count.
Every other quarterback was having their best game against the Panthers for 8 weeks, so you had to...
It's not like a false data point. It's real. It's just that the Giants are not the stiffest competition out there. Like, so, okay, Washington is a step up from that. They don't have the best defense in the world either, but it's better than the Giants. So, do we get another performance like that from Michael Penix Jr. against a better defense? Will he look as composed, as impressive, as capable of leading this team as he did a week ago, now that he has to play a quote-unquote real defense?
Yeah, and so, as I mentioned earlier, like I said, the Falcons have to win out. Not necessarily. If the Bucs lose, they're playing at 1 o'clock. We'll talk about them in a minute here. If they lose to the Panthers this week, this game is for the NFC South for the Falcons. A win, win and they're in. They can win either of the final 2 games. So there's a lot on the line here. And you're right, man. I want to see week 2 of Michael Penix Jr. I'll just say this: I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised by that. I was impressed by that week 1 performance. Giants are not. Knowing how much Atlanta loved Michael Penix, knowing that they made this move, right? So when you're making this move, and again, it's not like Kirk Cousins was an absolute disaster. It was bad. Touchdown interception ratio was horrible. I get it. Not an absolute can't possibly win with him disaster. But it was bad enough that they're doing the A/B analysis at practice saying, well, Michael Penix Jr. is going to give us a better shot. So knowing that, not that every team's going to always make the best QB decision, but knowing that, I wasn't surprised, right, that he came out looking pretty good. This will be a better test against Washington. They've been getting after it. They got their linebackers with Luvu and Wagner, and they could, screw you up a little bit with the blitz and the way they're, mix and match up front. So it'll be a bigger challenge. But not surprised by what Michael Penix Jr. does. Say the same thing I said about Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. Raises the ceiling of the offense for Atlanta, and doesn't mean the floor might be lower, but that's just theoretical. Cousins' floor was pretty bad. We saw that in the Chargers game with the 4 picks, 2 disastrous ones. So I'm expecting another decent game from the rookie. And the other rookie on the other side, Jaden Daniels, we had a very, not shouty show analysis on him. Impressive bounce back. He also threw a potential game-ending interception against Philadelphia. Yeah. But I don't really care, man. That dude's a playmaker, unbelievable scrambler, mostly accurate and good decision maker. Had a couple bad plays in there that he'd want back against Philadelphia, but that dude can flip the field. Jaden Daniels, create some big plays. This is going to be a fun game. Playoff type atmosphere, I think, in Washington from 2 potential playoff teams.
Yeah, it feels like if Atlanta wants to win this game, either they need a spectacular performance from Michael Penix that can go toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels, or they need the playmakers on that defense, guys like Jesse Bates, to manufacture a couple of turnovers. Like if they're able to generate a couple of steals of possessions the way the Eagles were last week, I think that they could definitely win the game that way. Other than that, I mean, Jaden Daniels has been so impressive. He's able to, other than that drive where he tried to throw it away, but like the 4th and 11 play, the drive after that where he did execute the game-winning drive, he's been generally extremely poised and, able to take advantage of those high-leverage single-play, gotta-have-it situations at an extremely high level, which again, let's remember, he's still a rookie. This is towards the end of his rookie season. Incredibly high level stuff by him. So if the Falcons want to win this, I think they need to either create some turnovers or have their own rookie play at a similar kind of level, which is obviously an extremely high bar.
Both teams pretty much rooting against Tampa Bay. Washington gets in with a win or a Tampa Bay loss. So if Tampa Bay loses, that's such a huge game against Carolina in the 1 o'clock window. Because this game's Sunday night. In the 1 o'clock window, if Tampa Bay loses, Falcons clinch the division with a win, and Washington will already have clinched a playoff berth because they're in this world where they're kind of competing for a wild card spot with these Falcons and also the Bucs. Is essentially the loser of the NFC South race here.
Yeah, Washington are like the Chargers, Broncos in the AFC. They're kind of already in. But obviously, like theoretically, they could lose their wild card spot if they lose out and one of the 8 and 7 teams wins out. It's just that's pretty unlikely. So they
as far as this game goes, I think it's two teams. I don't really trust either defense. I know, like again, Washington's played a little better in the second half, and they've Luvu and Wagner can have those big time games as do it all type of players. But man, I don't trust either defense to rush the passer consistently. Marshawn Lattimore maybe changes Washington's defense a little bit. He's got the hamstring injury. We'll see what happens with him. But I think we might have shootout potential here. And that's another test for – I think Jaden Daniels can hang in a shootout. I've seen him lead this incredible offense all season. I don't know if Michael Penix Jr. can yet. We haven't seen it. But I think that's what we're looking at here. Both teams, I think, have to be aggressive and put points on the board early on.
Yep. I'm going to go with Washington to cover.
Washington to cover?
Mm-hmm.
4.5? Give me the Falcons.
All right.
Going Atlanta here. And maybe to win the NFC South. We'll see what happens at the 1 o'clock game, Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Bucks. Oh, what's Harry doing in this one? That's what I had to find. Where's Harry? Because people care more. He's going Washington as well.
Well, his picks are more accurate than yours. That's why people are interested.
I am aware. Panthers at the Bucks. The Bucks favored by 8.5. Over under 48.5 over at FanDuel. Bucks are 8-7. Panthers are 4-11, but far more competitive than the record would show. Of course, these teams went to overtime just a few weeks ago in Carolina. Panthers last week went to overtime. They got the walk-off win. And, Panthers playing pretty good. That's a kind of a big spread for Carolina. Bucks, obviously, as I said, a lot to play for. They need to win out and have the Falcons lose one of their next two games to win the NFC South.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it? It's a big spread when you consider what the Panthers are in the last few weeks. I mean, outside of the Dallas game, which is the one game in the recent season for the Panthers where they've just been outclassed and they got wrecked, and every time the Dallas pass rush absolutely destroyed them, and anytime they got near Bryce Young, he turned the ball over, and so they lost that one by 16. That's the only game dating back to like week 9 that even comes close to covering this line. So that feels aggressive.
Yes. I mean, I think it's going to be close. At least it'll be close. Again, the only thing you're banking on is if Todd Bowles rallies the Bucs and just has them, just firing, man, with the playoffs on the line. It's going to be interesting. Like the Baker Mayfield experience, as I was trying to describe coming out of Sunday Night Football, I thought the Dallas game summed it up, right? You've got turnovers, you've got near turnovers, you've got bumper cars in the pocket. You have him breaking through a sack to shovel it off to the running back, and Rachaad White fumbles it to end the game. I am interested in that piece of it. Rachaad White, He has not been as effective as Bucky Irving. Like, I mean, who has? Who's been as effective as Bucky Irving?
Who?
Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, maybe.
Right.
I want to see if they load up more on Bucky Irving's plate now that the whole thing's on the line here, because that dude is a big play maker in the run game and in the pass game, and you can't handle Rachaad White. I don't think Rachaad White's a bad player, just not as crisp as a runner, and just tends to be around some of those, bad plays and key times, right? Like he was last week. But yeah, and then the Baker Mayfield experience, like he's the type of guy with the playoffs on the line, comes out firing and, just goes nuts. And I don't know if that's what this line is looking at, is just expecting to get the best from the Bucs. And if you do, yeah, they're tough to beat, man. They're really tough to beat, but it's been a bit of a roller coaster from Baker, and the defense has been inconsistent all year as well.
I remember, Todd Bowles' defense, heavy blitz rate. Since coming back into the lineup, Bryce Young has more big-time throws, according to PFF, against the blitz than any other quarterback in the NFL. He's at 11. Sam Darnold is at 9. Obviously, that's dependent on how much you're blitzed and how many opportunities you get, but a 9.7% big-time throw rate against the blitz is second in the NFL. It's him and Darnold are the number two, the top two guys, whether by volume or by percentage. And he's only got 2 turnover-worthy plays in those same plays. So, like, if that's going to be the game plan, again, which it is because it's Todd Bowles, Bryce Young in this scenario, as in all other scenarios, except when he plays Micah Parsons, has shown that's not going to work. Like, Bryce Young is capable of making big plays now against the blitz. He's also capable of scrambling for positive plays, as we've seen the last few weeks. I feel like this line is massively aggressive, and I think that Bryce Young and the Panthers are going to have some success.
I agree, man. I mean, that's what you described, Bryce Young against the blitz. I mean, that feels like the staple throw that we'll talk about throughout the offseason looking into next year. When we look back on this year, anticipation and accuracy from Bryce Young. And last week, dropping throws into the bucket throughout the season when they are sending the blitz, and he's anticipating where to go with the ball, quick decision making, the complete opposite of what we saw from Bryce, either the majority of his rookie season or in those first 2 games. It's been outstanding, including throwing to the middle of the field. So, I think we see another great game with Carolina and Tampa Bay. The only question is if Tampa Bay does actually, quote, want it more, and that matters in this game. But from a schematic standpoint, or from a game plan standpoint, want to see if there's more Bucky Irving from Tampa Bay. Also, the Mike Evans factor. I think him and Baker just have that ability to say, hey, let's go get it, right? Let's just go dominate. And Evans in particular, I saw people highlighting Mike Evans' career and maybe the fact that he has 1,000 yards every year being slightly overrated, little Frank Gore-ish.
Right.
Because has Mike Evans ever been a top 5, top 10, top 12 receiver in any given year? A couple times here and there. But he has games where he looks unstoppable, right? I don't think it's as consistent as others, but he has games where he looks unstoppable. This feels like it could be one of those where Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield say, all right, we're putting it on our shoulders. We're putting it on Bucky Irving's shoulders. We're just going to make too many plays, not leaving anything to chance for the defense. And hey, Bryce, go keep up with what we're bringing to the table here. So I think that's where that is in the range of outcomes, right? That is a possibility, and that's how Tampa would potentially cover this 8.5.
I think it probably is a little bit overrated. It's still also really impressive. Like, a huge part of some of these records is injuries, right? Like, Myles Garrett became the youngest player to ever hit 100 sacks. And somebody pointed out, yeah, well, Danielle Hunter would have annihilated that if he hadn't got hurt. It's like, yeah, well, a lot of people might have annihilated it had they not got hurt, but they got hurt. Like, part of all these records, what you can achieve in a given period of time is, are you able to simply stay on the field for all of those games and not have injuries be a factor? Mike Evans being as consistent as he has and generally always been out there. Okay, he's missed some games with a hamstring injury, et cetera. But, like, the durability, the reliability is part of his story. And does that make him as good as, T.O. or Chris Carter or whatever? No. But it's really impressive. Like, it's why he's in the running for a record like that. Well, a lot of these other wide receivers aren't, because they had a year where they got hurt and they missed the season and, whatever.
Yeah, you just have to know what the thing is describing, right? Because there's people like, oh, Mike Evans is first ballot Hall of Famer because of
Right.
this or that. And it's like, well, I don't know if I would say that, but he's been incredibly consistent and healthy.
I mean,
and it's funny because he comes out of games injured all the time. Like he looks like he's banged up a lot, and he always battles through and comes back. This year, of course, missed a few games, but
right.
That's part of the story. It doesn't mean he was a top. I don't think he's a top 5 receiver of his generation.
Right. There are guys who can't get in the Hall still, who I think are significantly better wide receivers than Mike Evans was, but he's still a really good wide receiver.
Yeah. So I think that's what we could be looking at this week. Mike Evans going off, Baker, Bucky, those guys going off here. But I'm with you. I think the spread is a lot. I'm assuming you're going to go Carolina here.
I am. I'm going to go Carolina. I feel like this has also got some shootout potential. I think this could be reasonably high scoring. But I think, the Panthers can keep it within that massive line.
I'll also take Carolina, as will Harry. And like I said, if Carolina does pull the upset, massive implications for the Sunday night football game as far as Washington and Atlanta goes. From Tampa Bay's perspective, they need to win out, and Atlanta needs to win one of their next 2, and the Bucs will be three-peat NFC South champions. All right, one more NFC game to discuss, and then a couple other games that just don't matter other than draft position. Arizona Cardinals and the Los Angeles Rams. This is the third game of the Saturday triple header. Rams 9-6, 6.5-point favorites over the 7-8 Arizona Cardinals.
Man, what kind of Cardinals team are you going to get any given week? Could be anything.
I just need to combine my Kyler and Matthew Stafford. Either one could be incredible in this game, and whoever does, they'll win.
Pretty much. Kyler's season is weird. I mean, he's got his overall PFF grade right now is 77.7. His passing grade is 74, but he's got that game which was against the Rams, right? That game with a 96.9 overall game, which might still be the single best game any quarterback has had this season, where he averaged 12.7 yards per attempt, had 6 big-time throws, right, on just 21 attempts. That's a 27% big-time throw rate. A high big-time throw rate is like 7%. 27% is utterly off-the-charts stupid.
Crazy.
A perfect passer rating, literally 158.3, 0 turnover-worthy plays, like basically a perfect game at quarterback. But he's got 4 games with grades in the 50s. Like it's very strange as a season. Like incredible highs, but seemingly at random, and then an awful lot of mid. Yeah,
and then even within a game, I thought last week wasn't his best game against Carolina, but they 3rd and 2 run a QB sweep, and he has special plays, man. Miami game where he's anticipation throws and a whole lot of special to Kyler Murray's game. So in any given week, he can bring that to the table. I still think ultimately Arizona playing hard, playing above their talent level, impressive defensive performance this year given their personnel. Tough to trust week in, week out. And the Rams trending in the right direction, getting the offense cooking until the last, but not so much the last couple of weeks. They've been grinded out against San Francisco in the rain, grinded out against the Jets in just like a low possession game. And so I think the Rams are interesting because they still have Stafford whipping it around the yard potential, but they've been grinded out, win some defensive battles over the last couple of games. So it's kind of like last year we said they've got this extremely young team and they came together as a youth movement offensively with Puka Nacua stepping up and a new offensive line and Kyron Williams. This year you're kind of seeing that maybe with the defense down the stretch here where the no-name defense is coming good, at least the last couple of weeks in a couple of those games.
They're also hilariously, like they're the 3 seed right now.
I know. I saw that. It feels like they're sneaking. I mean, they started 1-4,
right?
But they're the 3 seed, and the Falcons would be the 4 right now.
I mean, but in this weird conference where like the entire NFC West has felt like they're just sort of backing into the playoffs, one of them's going to get in there eventually. The South is almost similar. And then meanwhile, the North has got 3 teams that might all win 13 plus games. Like right now, the Rams are set up where they're in the 3rd seed, hosting obviously a playoff game with their first, but also only having to go on the road, once we're down to the top few seeds.
If Detroit, if we just projected it out, if Detroit does get the 1 seed, or say if the playoffs started right now, Minnesota's the 5 going
Right.
to Atlanta, and Green Bay's the 6 going to the Rams in the first round of the playoffs, and then
Yeah.
the Commanders would be going to Philly. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at right now. Rams is the 3 seed, just because the NFC North, those teams can't get one of the top two. The 2 losers in that division, who are playoff teams, have to be the 5 and the 6.
But also remember, like if Green Bay upsets Minnesota, like we could be in a scenario where Minnesota has to travel to the Rams, which is the one team this season that just outright beat the crap out of them.
True.
Like that's a dynamic at play here where the Rams I don't think would be I don't think they'd be favored against Green Bay in any capacity, but like it's obviously better to be doing that at home than it is on the road in Lambeau in January. But imagine like what a break it would be, because there's a lot of good teams potentially on the horizon. Imagine what a break it would be. Like Minnesota is coming to town you could be facing a 13+ win team, but it's the Vikings who you beat the crap out of earlier in the season, and they're coming to your building. So weird situation for the Rams where they still don't feel like they're that good a football team, but they're in a great position seeding wise to be hosting a playoff game.
Arizona also, officially eliminated from the playoffs last week. Both tackles injured. I mean, they're in that point where sending people to injured reserve and having their seasons end. So it's Kelvin Beachum probably playing left tackle here. Jackson Barton playing right tackle, I believe. So Jared Verse have some success up front. Arizona's at the point where their season's pretty much over, and Rams still playing for a lot here Saturday night.
The other thing I am curious about, are we going to see the Arizona Cardinals simply relentlessly feed Trey McBride the football, trying to get him a touchdown?
I hope so. I hope they do.
I mean, Kyler basically said don't worry, he's gonna get in the end zone. It feels like this, like there's nothing to play for anymore. The only thing they're playing for is so that Trey McBride doesn't set the all-time single season record for most catches without a touchdown.
Do not sit Trey McBride if he's on your team and you're in the fantasy finals. Yes. Get Trey McBride. I'll talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. in a minute here too. Actually, a couple guys in this game going to be a part of my PrizePicks lineup in a minute here. So, anyway, Rams have a lot more to play for. I think it's a fun game for Saturday night, especially if Arizona's playing hard. But 6.5, the Rams are favored. Where are you going to go with this one?
Yeah, don't love the size of the line, but I will go with the Rams to cover and win.
All right, I'll take Arizona to cover it. Rams win. Arizona covers. Harry's going to take the Rams in this one. Again, the number 3 seed, Los Angeles Rams, which if you said that before the season, that wouldn't be crazy.
Right.
But given the start to the season and the way the NFC North is just loaded, it feels wild.
If you said that at 1-4, it would seem crazy.
It would be, yes. Anyway, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. Best place to go get your tickets for whatever you're looking for. It's all about GameTime. They filter out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, theater, everything you're looking for. They get the all-in pricing toggle. You just press a button, toggle this feature. It shows the total up front. There's no surprise fees at checkout. You get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, so that's a great feature as well. And then they have the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. GameTime also has the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, so take the guesswork out of buying all your tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CheckTheMic, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckTheMic, for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, we got 2 games left. All that matters is draft position. Las Vegas Raiders and the New Orleans Saints. What's going on here? Raiders favored by 1.5. 5-10 Saints against the 3-12 Raiders. All you need to know is the Raiders currently have the number 6 pick in the draft. Saints actually down at number 10. So will the Raiders move even further down? Could get as low as 8 or 9 here with a win.
Man, yeah. The only man happy about that would be old Antonio Pierce. Delighted with himself, just ruining their draft position in the last final weeks of the season. This is Spencer Rattler against Aiden O'Connell? Is that what we're dealing with? This
sure is.
Late stage
so.
quarterback encounter?
I believe so. Anything. I mean, the reason to watch anything can happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely better than either one of these teams playing a good team, right? Where,
Oh yeah,
it should just be a one-sided beatdown. I mean, these are two pretty bad beat-up teams with two pretty wild, inconsistent young quarterbacks who could do anything in a given game. I mean, it should result. It's not necessarily going to be high caliber, efficient, beautiful football, but it's probably competitive.
as I always say for these teams, who's a part of the rebuild? If you're a fan of these teams, who are the guys to be a part of the rebuild? Watching, if you're the Saints, watching Talise Fuanga again as a rookie playing left tackle, and Kool-Aid McKinstry getting more reps at corner on the outside, and like that's what you're keeping an eye on. Brian Brzez's done a nice job rushing the passer. Still, watching his pad level in the run game. Can he improve that to take a leap in year 3 to be a better all-around player? That's the type of stuff you're watching here. Tyree Wilson with a bigger workload. If you're a Raiders fan, is he going to be an impact player in year 3 now that he's getting more reps now, and Max Crosby's out for the season? I guess that's what you're watching.
Yeah,
but that's about it in draft position.
Let's make picks. Brock Bowers, I think, is always fun.
And Brock Bowers, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So how high can he push that number over a season? He's already over
as far
1,000.
As star power goes. I mean, he's it in this game. He's the guy. So yeah, who's a part of the rebuild, and how many receptions and yards will Brock Bowers end up with on his way? He's got to break Ditka's. I would say he's got to break Ditka's record this week, but Ditka did it on a 14-game schedule,
so it doesn't count. Yeah, in your eyes. No.
Yeah, it's already gone.
Uh-huh.
But Brock Bowers is awesome. So yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, he is. I mean, Brock Bowers is genuinely worth watching in any given game. Like the Raiders, there's not much excitement about them at the moment. They are pretty terrible, even with a win. But Brock Bowers is spectacular. I mean, he's as good as any tight end in the NFL right now, and he's a rookie.
I love all football. If it was an Ireland game, I'd be locked in. But it's Sunday at 1. Draft implications on the line. Raiders by 1.5. Who are you going to take?
I'm going to go with the Saints for no particularly good reason.
I typed in my pick somewhere. No, I didn't. Harry's also going to take the Saints. Yeah, I'll take the Saints as well. I mean, home dogs trying to bounce back from the freezer situation.
The freezer, yeah. So
explain what happened.
The coach for the Saints apparently brought the quarterbacks into the walk-in freezer to prepare to run walkthroughs, to talk through plays, go through whatever, before the Green Bay Packers game, to get them used to, this is what it's like. This is what it's like in Lambeau, right? It's like a walk-in freezer. It's 25 degrees. You're cold as balls, and you have to think and come up with the plays and make the adjustments live. Can you handle that sitting on the frozen peas? Can you? I mean, look, the thing is, you've no way of knowing what the A/B analysis is, right? For all we know, this was the improved version of the offense. It actually worked, and they'd have gotten even fewer yards than whatever they got against Green Bay.
They would have had negative points,
right,
had they not done that.
In their shutout, this was actually peak performance. This was what they were capable of.
And then if it had worked, Dan Campbell might be stealing that for the future when he goes into Lambeau. You never know. If it works, copycat league. Everybody's, running walkthroughs in the freezer.
That's what I'm saying. We don't know what it would have been if they hadn't done that, right? They put up, what did they put up? 216 yards. Maybe they would have put up just the 16 yards if they hadn't been working in the freezer beforehand.
You never know. Who's to say? All right, let's wrap up the games. Then we got our PrizePicks lineups. Don't go anywhere. I've got another winning lineup for you at the end here. Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Heated division battle here. 3-12 Titans and the 3-12 Jags. Jags favored by 1.5. It's Mason Rudolph. It's Mac Jones. It's draft position. The Jags are the 3rd pick. The Titans are the 4th pick. A lot on the line here when it comes to the future of each organization. Is this Titans can get a quarterback potentially if things go their way? Jags could get Travis Hunter. I mean, there's a lot on the line here this week. I'm not being facetious. This is true. The future of both organizations on the line, perhaps based off the result of this game.
I mean, particularly, I would say Tennessee, where they currently occupy the 4th pick in a draft that might be 2 quarterbacks strong, right? This is whatever about if they lose and they remain at 4 and they're still in a precarious position. But like if they won this game, that takes them at least down to 7 right now and potentially further. Like that would be problematic, right? Like if it's a 2-quarterback class and they're both going 1, 2, or 3 or whatever, and you suddenly find yourself picking on the fringes of the top 10, that could be a problem. So yeah, it is an important game. I love though when we reach this like week 17, week 18, and it's just which slightly depressing backup quarterback combination are we seeing in these games? You know, Spencer Rattler against Aiden O'Connell, Mac Jones against Mason Rudolph. It's like, I don't know. It's like watching UFL teams sometimes. Like who are these guys that we remember from college sometime that used to be names?
It's not as bad as it was last year. I think last year was bad enough that I dusted off the take that there should be no trade deadline for quarterbacks. That you should we should never have to say like good playoff teams deal with bad backup QBs. They could just trade and maneuver them, right? Like it would just be better for the game. It's not as bad as it was last year, I don't think, but yeah, we've got a few of these, and at least they're all playing each other this week. A couple of these teams.
True. Yeah. That does improve it. Like if each one of these teams stuck with a backup quarterback with nothing to play for, we're going up against like a hot team, you know, Green Bay to like Baltimore or whatever, that would be awful. At least they're playing each other, and it's as I said, competitive, if not particularly high level, is what we're dealing with.
So for both teams, watch the kids, right? Watch the rookies, T'Vondre Sweat, J.C. Latham for the Titans. Watch Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jags. Yes. Can Mac Jones overthrow him 5 more times this week? We'll see. You know, that's what we're keeping an eye on here. Mason Rudolph, Calvin Ridley, downfield connection that was cooking last week. But
yeah, I mean, there is some exciting players. Like Brian Thomas Jr. is spectacular. He's this game's version of Brock Bowers, like absolute superstar, worth watching on his own. The Titans running backs are great. Like the combination of Pollard, Tajee Spears, those guys are amazing. They haven't been able to do it enough this year because of everything around them, but they are fun to watch play. There's definitely some individual players in this game that are worth watching.
Janko have anybody? Oh, he's got Bucky. Didn't highlight him for Bucky. He's got Janko's got a good shot here to win.
Yeah?
Yeah. He's got Devontae Adams, Monra.
Wow, yeah. There's people that are going to get fed all week.
CD Lamb, though. We got the big...
Risky.
He's got the big hospital sign next to CD Lamb. The way he was balling out last Sunday, but that the shoulder is iffy. But I got faith he's going to win and then share the proceeds with the podcast, I assume.
Yeah, perfect.
Once he wins. All right, let's make picks for this game. Then we'll get to our PrizePicks lineup. Speaking of winning some money.
Yeah. I'm going with
Jags by 1.5.
Jags to win and cover.
I'll take Tennessee just because. And Harry's going to take the Jags as well. I'm doing it to be different here. Who's going first on PrizePicks? You want to go?
Okay, I'll go as soon as I pull up the picture. All right.
I hope we didn't have did we have let me just check the notes and make sure I'm not screwing somebody over here. Sam, you're up first. Go.
Perfect. Okay. I believe that that Chicago's defense is in a bad way right now, and so Seattle's offense will cook, and in particular, Jackson Smith-Njigba, their number 1 receiver now. Forget DK Metcalf. JSN is the guy that this thing is working through. JSN is going to have more than 71.5 receiving yards against the Chicago defense. You mentioned it during the game breakdown. George Kittle last week looked as spectacular as ever. He is awesome. George Kittle is probably the best tight end in the NFL. It's just an opportunity-driven thing. Detroit's defense is banged up. It's in a bad way. It's limping into the postseason. And maybe the 49ers do have that exploding whale game, the dead cat bounce, whatever it is, just enough in them to attack a banged-up Detroit defense. George Kittle will have more than 69.5 receiving yards. And then Kyron Williams, the Rams. This is one I haven't seen before in PrizePicks, but I like it. We're going to combine rushing and receiving yards. And Kyron Williams, a guy that always seems to go over 100, is going to have more than 99.5 rushing and receiving yards. So he doesn't need to get it all rushing. He can, but he doesn't need to. We can get him a little bit more with the receiving yardage.
Nicely done. I like it. Yeah, and you've spread it across Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Monday. So you have nothing on Sunday. You're going Thursday, Saturday, Monday games.
All the islands. 3.
I like it. All right, so I'm going to go back. I got two guys in that Rams game, but let's start with Marvin Harrison Jr. I got him more than 48 and a half receiving yards here. So, way back in week 2, that Kyler Murray unbelievable game that you talked about, that was the Marvin Harrison Jr. breakout game, which he hasn't really built upon a ton.
Right.
But that was his first breakout when we were all questioning his speed, which still might be an issue. Had 130 yards in that first matchup, but I think he'll go more than 48 and a half here. Kyler going to feed him and Trey McBride in this game. I've got Justin Herbert against the Patriots, more than 229 and a half passing yards. I do believe the Chargers going to have to throw the ball a little bit against New England, and Herbert playing really well. They get their season on the line here, trying to get into the playoffs. So that felt a little low. So I like that. Justin Herbert, more than 229 and a half passing yards. And then the other one, going back to the Rams-Cardinals game, Cooper Kupp, who's been a non-factor the last few weeks here for the Rams. But I got him going more than 5.5 receptions. I believe the Rams, they've got their chance with their season, trying to clinch the NFC West. More than 5.5 receptions. That Cooper Kupp has not been targeted, hasn't been a part of the offense, in part because you got the rain game, you got the kind of slow-paced game against the Jets. That's why. That's why Cooper Kupp wasn't getting the ball, but he will this week. So that's where I'm going. Saturday's a big day for me in that Rams-Cardinals game. So you guys can join in as well. Download the PrizePicks app. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. And I'm coming off a win last week, so got to keep going.
I was in such good shape right up until CeeDee Lamb slammed his shoulder into the turf.
I know you. That's what you get for going the obscure CeeDee Lamb rushing yards, man. It's your fault. All right, well, fun week. Appreciate everybody for being with us during Christmas week, during all the holidays, or whatever you might be celebrating. Happy Hanukkah to all those that celebrate as well. It's I don't know if we're going live tonight or not. We'll see. I'm at the in-laws. It's a big game. We'll see what happens. But we'll definitely be here first thing Monday morning. I'll be back in the studio, and we'll be recapping all things Week 17. And don't forget about Circa. If you're in Vegas, or I don't know,
get to Vegas.
If you want to fly out to meet us,
that's what we're
hang
saying.
out at Circa Week 18. Check out the link in the description, circalasvegas.com/huddle up at Overhang, and come join us. We'll be there the entire weekend hanging out at Circa. Got anything else, Sam?
No, let's do it.
All right. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again Monday morning with more Check the Mic.